Chapter 1307. Old God. A wisp of Chun Hao's heart floated in the deepest part of his mind. The aura of the old god was gradually getting stronger, and the emotions that were gradually surging out of it had already made Chun Hao certain that the old god was about to wake up. Thinking of all the things that had happened in the past, Chun Hao was very excited. During the days when the old god was not around, Chun Hao deliberately did not think of it and deliberately suppressed it. Just like how he missed the girls, it did not easily appear in Chun Hao's mind. On the road to the peak of martial arts, one was destined to endure unbearable loneliness and loneliness. This was something that Chun Hao had already realized when he decided to set foot on the great world of Xiandi alone. When the old god collapsed and fell into nirvana, he did not know what the old god had done for him, but he knew that the reason he could wake up so quickly, enter the Milky Way star area, and succeed in reincarnation so quickly was definitely due to the old god. Unfortunately, when he succeeded in nirvana, he could no longer sense the old god's aura. The aura of the Milky Way tunnel in the vast thousand chaotic world was the only remaining aura of the old god. Chun Hao had always thought that it might be the place where the old god was. No matter what, when he was strong enough, he had to go back and take a look. However, all this time, Chun Hao had not really cared because in the depths of his mind, he did not think that the old god would die. Subconsciously, he firmly believed that the old god would return one day. Now, the old god's aura finally appeared again. Chi, chi, boom, boom, boom. Countless immortal core crystals were still exploding, and the released heaven and earth spiritual chi did not stop at all and disappeared strangely. As time passed, the old god's aura became stronger and stronger. Finally, after a full year, when the mountain of immortal core crystals that Chun Hao had obtained was almost used up, Master, the familiar voice of the old god floated directly in the depths of Chun Hao's mind. Old god, you're finally awake. Master, I woke up before you woke up. However, when you reincarnated into your true self, I had no choice but to follow you into nirvana. Old god's voice was very clear, but it was still very weak. Follow me to nirvana? What do you mean? When you reincarnated and underwent nirvana, it was like starting from scratch. Whether it was your soul or the space in your mind, it was a process of condensing from nothing. If I did nothing in your mind, it would definitely affect you and even cause the nirvana of your true self to fail. At that time, I could either leave you and wait for you to succeed in your nirvana before entering your mind, or I could undergo nirvana with you and start from scratch. I chose to undergo nirvana with you. You're going to undergo nirvana with me? Chun Hao asked in surprise. Yes, master. After the nirvana of my true self, I woke up earlier than you, master. However, I need to absorb too much energy to come out of the nirvana of my true self. I only dare to start when your energy meets my requirements. Otherwise, once I start, I won't be able to stop. If I don't have enough energy, I'll fail. I thought it would take a long time. I didn't expect Master to obtain such a huge amount of supreme-grade celestial origin crystals. Damn, old god, don't tell me you won't leave me with this little bit. Although Chun Hao was happy, when he heard the old god say that the celestial origin crystals were still lacking, his heart ached. That was a huge amount of wealth. A mountain of celestial origin crystals. As Wan Yishui said, it was enough for her to use for a lifetime. Although he had used up more than half of it, the remaining little bit was still a huge number for Chun Hao. It was still very useful. But the old god's appetite was too king exaggerated. I really can't leave it. Not only can I not leave it, I'm afraid you'll have to frantically devour the energy of heaven and earth to help me. And that, I'll borrow the celestial origin crystals that little girl, Wan Yishui, collected in her mind. Chun Hao was speechless. Master, do you have the heart to see me unable to truly awaken? Where in the world can you find a super refiner and alchemist like me? Before my true self underwent nirvana, my original body could transform into 100 different forms and be used by Master. Now that it has successfully undergone nirvana, how strong will it be? Also, in this world, who can cooperate better than me with Master? My realm is always one level higher than Master's, just a little bit more powerful. As long as Master and I fuse further, the increase in strength will be very, very significant. At least I feel that after we fuse, if we meet that pair of Beatrice Cheese, Xiao, Mantion, and Feng Hanwei again, we definitely won't have to run. In fact, we can trample on them however we want. Oh, right, Master. I've awakened a lot of memories. There are memories of the previous Master, the previous Master, the previous Master, the previous Master, and the previous Master. Stop. Chun Hao was speechless and stopped the old god from continuing. He finally realized that the old god had become as shameless as Master Fatty after his true self had undergone nirvana. Moreover, from the old god's words, it was obvious that he was well aware of Chun Hao's experiences during this period of time. In short, Master, every time I realize that I'm not that great, I'll realize that I've underestimated myself. Now, I finally understand that I should be the legendary Gao Qi, whose memories and cultivation have been sealed. As Master improves, I'll improve automatically. Moreover, there's a very, very important point. Stop. Old God, first, principles are still principles, and they remain unchanged. Second, no matter how much you use, you have to make up for it. Treasure Hunter is still there, right? Of course, but it can't appear for the time being. I can only summon it after I've completely undergone nirvana. That's fine. Continue to swallow. Buzz. Chun Hao's mind moved, and a strand of divine thought floated into the only pure land in his mind that was sealed off. At this moment, Wan Yishui was sitting cross-legged. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her delicate body was trembling nonstop. Her entire body was drenched in cold sweat, and runes were flickering on the wound on her chest. Even now, it was still emitting a sharp aura. This was the Dao mark left behind by Xiao Mantion and Feng Hanwei. It had already been a whole year, but Wan Yishui still hadn't gotten rid of it. From this, it could be seen how high Xiao Mantion and Feng Hanwei's comprehension of the heavenly Dao was. It's been a year, Sister Shui. Do you really not need any help? Chun Hao's voice once again resounded in Wan Yishui's mind. In the past year, although Chun Hao was immersed in a state of madness, Wan Yishui's every move couldn't escape his senses. He had offered to help many times, but the other party didn't agree. She insisted that he get rid of Chun Hao's Dao mark. This also made Chun Hao increasingly aware of this girl's stubbornness. Chapter 1308. No need, Wan Yishui said. Although self-healing was a little painful, it was a rare cultivation opportunity for cultivators. However, this was for Dao marks whose cultivation realm was slightly higher than the injured person. If the difference was too great, it would be a kind of torture, and Wan Yishui's current situation was more or less torture. She really did not want to use this method to cultivate, but the strange thing was that the place where she was injured was too sensitive. Her chest. Although she knew that the fatty was not a real lecherous person, asking the fatty to help heal her would inevitably touch the wound. How could Wan Yishui, who still maintained her primordialine body, be embarrassed? You really don't need it? Isn't it just your chest? What kind of boobs have I not seen before? Just this little bun of yours is not enough for me to look at. No need. Fatty, don't talk nonsense. Wan Yishui said with a red face. She cursed the fatty in her heart for being shameless. Although she did not understand the terms the fatty used, she could understand the fatty's meaning. All right. However, you don't need my help, but I need your help. You need my help? Wan Yishui was slightly puzzled. That's right. Take out all the immortal essence crystals you collected. Let me see. What for? Wan Yishui said vigilantly. Don't be nervous. Do you think I care about your little bit of immortal essence crystals? I just found something and need you to take it out to verify. What did you find? Take it out, and you'll naturally understand. Hurry up. Don't delay my cultivation. All right, don't even be greedy for this little bit of mine. Wan Yishui looked at the fatty who had transformed with her mind. She felt that there was a conspiracy, but she could not think of what the fatty could do. After all, He already had a mountain of immortal essence crystals. There was no need to be greedy for the little bit she collected, right? Chi, chi, chi. Juan Ishue's glabella shone brightly, and immortal essence crystals gushed out. Strange. How could it be? Quick, take it out for me to see. The fatty waved his hand, and the immortal essence crystals floated in front of him. His eyes were filled with doubt, as if he was talking to himself. At the same time, he urged Juan Ishue to take them out. Juan Ishue's curiosity was also aroused by the fatty, but she could not see what was wrong with the immortal essence crystals. What was the fatty curious about? Why are they all fine? Are they all trash that stumped me? Yours is the real one. Hurry up, Sister Shue, hurry up, take them all out. Fatty shook his head. Fatty, why can't I see anything unusual? Everything I've collected is abnormal, but yours is indeed not. Hurry up, hurry up. What's wrong with you? We'll talk about it after I finish reading it. The strand of old God's mind was speechless as he looked at his master's mind incarnation who had disguised his appearance. Although old God knew everything about Chun Hao, it was too much for him to be so vulgar, especially to a little girl. We can start now. When Juan Ishue took out all his immortal essence crystals, Chun Hao's voice echoed in the old God's mind. Chi, 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 rumble, rumble. Sympathy was sympathy, but old God did not hesitate at all. He immediately carried out Chun Hao's orders. There was no other way. His nirvana of true self was different from Chun Hao's nirvana of true self. If he wanted to succeed, he had to devour endless energy. Two screams were heard. My immortal essence crystals. Fatty, what's going on? So it's the same as mine. The fatty's face was full of shock. He said shamelessly, Sister Shue, there's something wrong with these immortal essence crystals. Look, the mountain of immortal essence crystals that I collected is also gone. It also exploded like this, but there's no energy left behind. Buzz. Fatty directly connected with Juan Ishue's mind. A gentleman is magnanimous. Juan Ishue, on the other hand, widened his eyes and mouth in shock. Even though he had long known that the fatty's mental space had the ability similar to the mental world and was incomparably huge, when his mind truly merged with the fatty's mind into the entire mental world, the shock it brought to Juan Ishue was still incomparably huge. For a moment, he even forgot that his immortal essence crystals had exploded and disappeared. Sigh. I was happy for nothing. These immortal essence crystals are probably too old. They only have the shape and meaning, but they don't really have the original spiritual energy of heaven and earth. You integrate it into your great world. As soon as Chun Hao finished speaking, Juan Ishue, who had woken up, asked directly, how could... Do you think I'm stupid? Damn fatty. In this year, I used a lot of energy to heal myself, and I relied on them to support me. Every one of them is a real top-grade immortal essence crystal. Not good. Someone's coming. Sister Shue, you continue. I'll go out and take a look. Chi. The shameless fatty directly left. Juan Ishue was so angry that he stomped his feet, but he could only accept it. Phew. Chun Hao's mood was relaxed as he completely withdrew from the state of cultivation. Of course, he knew that Juan Ishue was not so easy to fool. The reason why he did this was to find an excuse for him to directly ask to borrow immortal essence crystals. How embarrassing would that be? Another point was to force Juan Ishue to make a certain decision. Sometimes it was necessary to use force on this stubborn girl. Otherwise, they would continue to persist in meaningless or meaningless things. Chun Hao felt the surging power in his body. He knew that although this year had helped the old god recover to the greatest extent under the refinement of the primary instruction of the Great Tao and a large number of immortal essence crystals, his strength had also improved greatly. My true origin and physical strength have increased by at least 20%, but I still don't feel full. Boom. Chun Hao casually threw a punch, and the boundary that had been formed a year ago was directly turned into ashes. It's meaningless to continue refining. I must have the corresponding comprehension to improve. Nearly 3,000 times, half a year is nearly 1,500 years, Chun Hao murmured. From the old god, Chun Hao had learned that the space-time law of this secret realm space was about 3,000 times that of the great world of CND. If the old god had not solemnly said that this was based on the awakened space-time law, Chun Hao would not have believed it at all. After all, the great world of CND could be said to be the most powerful vast thousand realms that Chun Hao knew. How could the primitive secret realm surpass it by so much? However, the conclusion that the old god had deduced from the experience of the Emperor's Star later resolved Chun Hao's doubts. Damn fatty. Sure enough, as Chun Hao expected, one Ishue's voice appeared in his mind not long after. Help me heal. Okay, you can't peek, and you can't take advantage of me. I've said it before, I'm not interested in small steam buns. But you mean I could do it openly? Chapter 1309. Chi. Chun Hao directly released one Ishue from the space in his mind. With a harmless smile on his face, he stared at one Ishue, who had a face full of anger and helplessness. Despicable, shameless, vulgar, evil, sinister, and cunning. This was one Ishue's deepest feeling. However, without the energy support of the supreme-grade celestial origin crystal, one Ishue would not be able to resist Xiao Mantian's powerful Dao mark for long, let alone comprehend it. Therefore, she could only choose to let the fatty help her to break the Dao mark and completely heal her. And this was all because of the shameless fatty. If you weren't shameless, we would still be friends. One Ishue glared at the fatty angrily for half a minute before she finally choked out a sentence. Puffed. But this sentence made the fatty spit out. Ha ha! Sister Shue, get ready. Focus your mind, get rid of all distracting thoughts, and sense carefully. Don't think about Ruo Fei Fei. Chi. Chun Hao laughed and released waves of energy, immediately binding Wan Ishue. They sat cross-legged facing each other. At the same time, what made one Ishue's face turn red was that Chun Hao's right hand contained endless mysterious runes, and he slapped her full right breast. Wan Ishue wanted to dodge and stop, but the fatty's powerful binding had predicted all of this, making her unable to resist at all. The only thing she could do was to bite her lips and close her eyes. Since you can't resist, just enjoy it obediently. The fatty's damnable voice made one Ishue feel ashamed. She wished she could find a hole to hide in, and she regretted letting the fatty do it. But now she had no way out. Buzz. The sudden high-frequency vibration from her soft breasts made one Ishue's entire body go numb. However, what made her slightly relieved was that the fatty's seemingly wretched claws did not directly press on her soft breasts. Instead, endless mysterious runes were sent out through the air, as if they had condensed into tentacles. It's just a joke. Why are you so nervous? Wan's that little man too? I'm really not interested. Hurry up, focus your mind. I'll help you comprehend it. Just treat it as compensation with your celestial origin crystal. The fatty said without restraint, but against his will. Wang Zai Xiao Mantu. If Wan Ishue's twin peaks were also called small steam buns, then there wouldn't be many women in the world who could be called big steam buns. Although he did not touch it with his own hands, the sensation of his tentacles was no less than real hands. It was full, round, and firm. It could definitely be considered a perfect chest shape. Even if Fatty did not have any improper thoughts at this moment, out of the most normal reaction of a man, he would still have a certain feeling, especially when he thought about what the old god had said. He and Wan Ishue were going to spend more than 1,000 years together. He couldn't do it for real. Could he just let his imagination run wild? There's nothing wrong with fantasizing. However, in just a moment, Chen Hao's mind had completely regained its clarity and had temporarily fused with Wan Ishue's mind, allowing Wan Ishue to clearly sense how he had broken the Dao marks left behind by Xiao Mantian. Even though Chen Hao did not want to admit it, he had to admit that the Dao marks that Xiao Mantian had left behind were difficult for him to do. Now that he could easily break through them, it was because he was already familiar with the Dao marks. Otherwise, even for him, it would take him several days of comprehension before he could decipher it. Hiss, hiss. Right when Chun Hao was healing Wan Ishui, four figures suddenly flew over from the sky. Two men and two women. Obviously, they were from the same power. There are actually people healing? Their auras seem rather strong. They are from the Dahua Academy. After they saw Chun Hao and Wan Ishui's appearances, the four of them immediately confirmed Chun Hao and Wan Ishui's identities. Before they stepped foot into the primal secret realm, they could easily remember the 10,000-plus disciples of the 3,000-plus powers with a single glance. There are only two of them. Those two powerful external aids aren't here. If all four of them were here, then we could only hide. As for the two of them, we can't hold back. What do you think? Of course, not to mention that they are still healing. We wasted an entire year in order to avoid the ocean of Cloud's Academy. They are injured, and I presume they are from fighting for treasures. Moreover, with their strength, they should have gained quite a bit in a year, right? That's for sure. The heavens are helping us. Let's go. Hiss, 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 hiss. The two men and two women had a trace of excitement on their faces as they landed beside Chun Hao and Wan Ishui. Chun Hao and Wan Ishui sensed the four of them the moment they appeared in the void. Moreover, they opened their eyes. However, they were at a critical juncture in their recovery. If they gave up now, it would be equivalent to wasting all their previous efforts. Unless it was necessary, Chun Hao was naturally unwilling to give up. Moreover, what made Wan Ishui slightly surprised was that the fatty who seemed to be very relaxed earlier suddenly became unwell the moment the four of them appeared. His fat face was covered in cold sweat, and he was terrifyingly pale. His chubby body was trembling slightly, as if he had exhausted too much energy, or the Dao marks on Wan Ishui's body were too strong. However, in just an instant, Wan Ishui thought of what the wretched fatty was up to. Therefore, before the fatty could remind her, the intelligent Wan Ishui instantly became unwell. Her pretty face was flushed red, as if she was in a half-awake state due to her heavy injuries. The leader's cultivation was obviously the highest, and he was also the core disciple of the four. After he slowly landed beside the two of them, he chuckled. His gaze swept past the fatty and Wan Ishui and finally landed on Wan Ishui's face. Especially when he saw the fatty stretch out his hand to help Wan Ishui heal. His gaze paused slightly on Wan Ishui's full and round breasts, shining with a gaze that a man should have. However, it quickly disappeared. This Dao marks chi is so profound. The person who injured you must be very powerful, right? Brother, what do you want to do? The fatty's gaze locked onto the other party, and his voice trembled slightly as he asked in pain. What do you think? The leader smiled and turned to look at Chun Hao. His gaze was filled with a sense of ridicule. We are currently healing. I hope you don't. Don't mess around. Huh? Fatty, you're not stupid? Before we came, I heard that you were the chief student of Dahua Academy, and you even defeated Yantian. I couldn't tell it all, but your luck seems to be pretty good. Another person's gaze seemed to be a little blatant as he glanced at Wan Ishui's body. Primordialine body. Furthermore, she was a genius female disciple of Dahua Academy. In this primal secret realm competition, it was destined to be a competition without any rules. No matter what they did, it was within the rules. No one could control them, and they would not be restricted by any laws. Since they were going to kill and steal, wouldn't it be a pity to waste the primordialine body of a genius? Chapter 13:10. Cut the crap. Hand over everything you have, and we can give you a quick death. One of the female disciples frowned and said coldly when she saw the perverted look in the young man's eyes. How can we do that? It's still a waste. Junior brother Wu Peng, shut up. You have to have a bottom line. In a competition, the strong are respected, but you can kill but not humiliate. Fatty, Wan Ishui, right? Hand over everything and pay a level of cultivation, and we can let you live. The leader winked at the other young man and said, Senior brother Lin Tao is right. All right, hand it over now. You want to mess around? Although the fatty still looked like he was in pain, his voice was no longer trembling. His already small eyes narrowed into a slit as he looked at the four of them. "If you don't want to die, be quick," the lady said coldly. "Hand over everything and pay a level of cultivation, and you will let us go." The fatty seemed to be intimidated by the other party's aura and frowned. "Promise not to touch her. Do you have a choice? Cut the crap. I will count to 3. The two of you. Open up your mind space or die." Chi 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 chi. Following the leader's words, the four of them surrounded Chun Hao and one Ishui. At the same time, they released extremely powerful pressure, which pressed down on Chun Hao and one Ishui. Their bodies bent at the same time, and blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. One Ishui was indeed not faking it, but she knew that the fatty was definitely not real. She was very clear about how strong the fatty's ability to withstand pressure was. This bit of pressure, even she could withstand it when she was not injured, let alone the abnormal fatty. Similarly, Wan Ishui was not at all worried that the four of them would be a threat to them. In the entire primitive secret realm, only the top Shao Mantion and a few others could threaten the perverted fatty. The rest were simply asking for death. 1. The leader was very satisfied with everyone's cooperation. The fatty and Wan Ishui's performance was also within his expectations. At this moment, in his eyes, the two of them were already prey in his hands. Whether they killed them or cut them off, they were all firmly in his hands. 2. He slowly extended his hand, and the mysterious and powerful laws of the Abhijna started to gather. 3. However, what surprised the leader was that his divine power law had not been condensed yet. He had just shouted 2, but someone had shouted 3. Chi, chi, chi. There was no time for him to think. Similarly, the other 3 didn't have time to think. An incomparably sharp sword light suddenly appeared in their eyes at the same time, rapidly enlarging. He didn't have time to react, because this sword light was truly too swift. What was even stranger was that it didn't contain any divine ability or laws, nor did it contain any energy. It was soundless like a venomous snake flicking its tongue, and it seemed to step on the pulse of the heavens and the earth and the circulation of all things as it flashed past. In their eyes, the heavens and earth dimmed, leaving only the incomparably sharp sword light. Puff! Puff! Wan Ishui's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A sword without any energy or divine ability laws had directly wiped out 4 heads that had been alive just a moment ago. The 4 heads were still rolling on the ground with their eyes wide open. The 4 headless bodies had their blood essence soaring into the sky. Impossible. Impossible. Close it up. Ah, I'm going to kill you. F***CK. Shameless. How dare you launch a sneak attack? After a short period of pain and shock, the 4 primordial spirits directly controlled the heads and bodies to fly up, and at the same time, they cursed at Chun Hao. However, Chi, the fat man who was sitting cross-legged, didn't even stand up. His sword fingers turned into numerous after-images in the void. In an instant, the whole world was filled with sharp sword light that contained monstrous killing intent. Boom, 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 boom. The 4 heads and the headless bodies didn't even have time to unite before they were turned into minced meat in the endless sword light. The moment the heads exploded, countless things spilled out. Obviously, that was the result of the primordial spirits not having time to completely separate, and the explosions continued. However, whether it was the spiritual items of heaven and earth, immortal origin crystals, or the energy contained in their bodies at this time, they were all bound by invisible tentacles and directly entered between the fat man's eyebrows. Devour. You. What do you want to do? The 4 primordial spirits, bound by the irresistible tentacles, floated in front of Chun Hao, extremely terrified. What I want to do? Ha ha ha. What do you think I want to do? The fat man, with a harmless smile on his face, glanced at the 4 primordial spirits and asked in return, "Sorry, we were wrong before. Please let us go." "Sorry? Let you go? Damn you. Your words are better than a song. If I were really weak, would you let me go? Even she would be humiliated to death by you, right?" The fat on Chun Hao's face trembled. He stood up and pointed at the nose of the person who spoke and scolded. Although they were only primordial spirits in the Daluo Golden Wonderland, especially for geniuses like them, their primordial spirits were relatively solid. No, it won't. Don't King talk nonsense with me. What else do you have in your mind? Call them all out. No, directly open up the space in your mind, or die. I'll count to 3. I'll give. I'll give 2. Please let me go. No matter what request you have, I'll agree to it. As long as you don't kill me. The woman said with a touch of fervor in her eyes. Me too. I'll be at your disposal. Bitch, she's 10,000 times prettier than you. Don't King disgust me. The fatty said disdainfully. At the same time, for spiritual tentacles suddenly came out from between his eyebrows and instantly entered the other party's mind. Originally, the 4 of them thought that he was just going to rob them of their belongings, but a moment later, the 4 of them collapsed to the ground in shock. Not only was their mind emptied, even the energy that they had accumulated over many years of cultivation was sucked dry. What kind of monster was this? Remember to open your eyes in your next life. No, I'm willing to pay for my own cultivation. Don't kill me. The grace of a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. I didn't say that I wouldn't kill you if you cut off your own cultivation. Die. Chi. Bang. Are you stupid? Wan Yishui, who was stunned, frightened, and terrified, suddenly felt a pain in her forehead. She was awakened by Chun Hao's violent knock. You're the one who's stupid. Fatty, aren't you too cruel? You didn't even spit out the bones when you ate people. Wan Yishui, who came back to her senses, said without hesitation. She also didn't know what was going on with her. Fatty was obviously very scary, but now, she wasn't afraid of him at all. Some people deserve to die. They happen to be. Don't forget how they wanted to deal with us before, especially you. If they were the ones who won, you really don't know how miserable you would be right now. Wan Yishui shuddered and didn't say anything else. If you delay, all your previous efforts will be wasted. Let's start again. Don't restrain me. The good show is yet to come. If I don't restrain you, what if something goes wrong? Even if nothing goes wrong, you can't help but moan. How embarrassing would that be? Nonsense. I won't. Good. Begin. Cultivators had to endure loneliness. They were destined to accompany each other for 1,500 years. Shen Hao also thought it through. There was no need to deliberately avoid anything. Especially sometimes gratitude and grudges might have been destined from the beginning. Chapter 1311. Letting nature take its course should be the best way to deal with it. After a full 6 hours under the guidance of Chun Hao, the marks on Wan Yishui's chest finally disintegrated little by little. The pain that tormented her for a year and fought with her over and over again finally disappeared. That comfortable feeling, as if the shackles that bound her soul had suddenly been broken, was simply indescribable. Perhaps because she was too excited, Wan Yishui suddenly threw herself into Fatty's arms and hugged him tightly. But because he was too fat, she could not hug him and excitedly screamed. Seduction. F***CK. This is definitely seduction. The fatty felt Wan Yishui's passionate embrace, as well as the charming and gentle feeling brought about by the compression of her chest, and was a little dazed. The feeling was naturally very good, but was there a need to be so excited? The fatty did not push away the excited Wan Yishui, but reservedly hung his hands on both sides of his body, as if he did not know where to put them. As an experienced person, especially a young and vigorous person, the fatty knew the horror of dry wood and fierce fire. This was not the time to test how strong one's willpower was. No matter how strong one's willpower was, even if one's state of mind was not disturbed, it would ultimately affect the underlying balance of yin and yang. Therefore, once it started, it could not end. It had to go all the way. Only by truly completing the final step would he be successful. Therefore, the fatty absolutely could not indulge himself to take the first step at this time. Otherwise, the sea of bitterness would be boundless. The screaming Wan Yishui finally stopped and lowered her head. It could be said that she, who was lying in Chun Hao's arms, was slightly stunned when she saw Chun Hao's nowhere to put hands, and then the corners of her mouth hooked up into a smug smile. Is that enough? Thank you. You're welcome. Remember not to seduce me in the future. I'm not a good person. Maybe if I can't hold it in, I'll do you on the spot and not take responsibility. Don't think that I don't dare to hug you. I just don't want to start. Let's go. The fatty shrugged and then directly soared into the air. Wan Ishui's face was slightly red. She did not expect the fatty to be so direct and use such unpleasant words. Seduce? Who did he think he was? Damn that fatty. But due to the fatty's strength, Wan Ishui naturally did not dare to say anything and could only follow. The space-time laws here are probably thousands of times more than the outside world. Be mentally prepared for a long battle. It can't be? How did you know? Feeling. Chi. The two streaks of light, one in front and one behind, finally began to delve deeper. A path of seizing treasures that was filled with blood, cruelty, and where the strong were respected had finally officially begun. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei were a pair of Taoist companions. Young master of saber and sword Ding Hao, who dared to provoke Xiao Mantian, and the two disciples of the new generation sword king Chun Taishu, Qin Yang and Miao Xian, could be said to be as many experts as the clouds. This was the first time that the god of slaughter Chun Hao had crossed swords with a true genius from the great world of CND. What kind of performance would he have when he transformed into a wretched fatty? What kind of encounter would he have? Master! Master! Chi 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 chi! Streams of light drifted out from the gate of time and space, and beautiful figures of different styles slowly landed in the deepest part of the sanctum. This was the ancient chaos great thousand world. Master, who are they? Almost at the same time, the eyes of several beautiful young women flashed with a hint of surprise as they looked at the old man, who was sitting cross-legged with a smile on his face, and asked. Beside the old man, there was an extremely handsome young man. His hands were holding his head, his legs were crossed, and there was a beautiful flower in his mouth. There was an invisible trace of evil charm in his eyes as he sized up the young women who had just arrived. His naked eyes were very annoying, and the young women who had just arrived ignored him. They didn't even give him a second glance. And beside the young man, there was a young woman who was sexy and cute like a fairy. Her entire body emitted an invisible, holy, and ethereal aura. Her eyes also swept across the young women, and she muttered a name when she saw one. Sister Shui, Little Wu, Mainyang, Little Lien, Yu Little Ting, Huan Huan Lele, Ningbing, Little Yin, Sister Mei, Little Qing, Chun Shui, Helian Wuzi, Hu Mainyang, Tantai Lien, Xia Yu, Long Ting, Lung Ninghuan, Lung Ningle, Bailey Ningbing, Chen Yin, Xiao Mei, and Chen Xiaoqing. Including me and Sister Qianqian, that's 14. Teacher Si Xian probably won't be able to escape from Brother Hao's evil clutches. 15 plus. Phew! Pairs are so big. Little Nurse Lu Hui, the reincarnated immortal emperor of all things, was the only one who hadn't stepped into the cycle of reincarnation. Just by looking at their current appearances, she could naturally recognize who was who. Although the experiences of this cycle of reincarnation were different, and their temperaments were slightly different from the original bodies, it was easy to change mountains and rivers, but a person's nature couldn't be changed. Relatively speaking, this change was completely negligible. What a scoundrel! What kind of luck is this? Big Brother is so handsome, elegant, and talented. How come I don't have luck with women? They're all clearly the women I deeply love, so why are they so cruel to me? Another youth was naturally the seventh anima that had completely linked up with his memories. At this moment, he looked frivolous, but in his heart, he was thinking about the original body. There was no need to doubt his jealousy and hatred. One after another, fresh cabbage was placed in front of him. Moreover, they were all his, yet they ignored him. How could he feel good? Master, why didn't I hear you mention these disciples? Chun Yin went to Yilan's side like a little bird and said, It feels so familiar, as if I've seen them somewhere before. Haha. Long Ting let out a charming laugh. Little sister, you also have this feeling? Big sister also has this feeling. It's so familiar, so familiar. I feel that all of you are very familiar. At this moment, Chun Shui, who was still wearing a blue dress, suddenly asked, Master, I'm a reincarnated body. Or should I say, all of us are reincarnated bodies, right? The name that sister just said is the name of our original body, right? Master, Hu Meinyang said. Immortal light lingered around her. Her innate Tao embryo didn't seem to have changed in the slightest. Reincarnation. Hellion Wuzi, who was as cold as the moon, muttered to herself. Her bright and clean forehead faintly wrinkled. An absent-minded, hazy image suddenly appeared in her mind along with the fluctuations of her mind. Reincarnation, moreover, it's reincarnation within reincarnation. How? Chun Shui, Hu Meinyang, Long Ting, Tantai Lian, Xia Yuyu, Lung Ming Huan, Lung Ning Lu, Chun Yin, Xiao Mei, Chun Xiaoqing. Lu Hui. Hellion Wuzi's gaze swept over the girls and reported their real names. Senior Yilan. How's seventh anima, huh? Yilan, who had been smiling and not speaking, finally laughed out loud. Chapter 13:12. Little Wu, you've experienced the awakening of the endless cycle of reincarnation, so you're the easiest to break through the old man's seal. All right, you've all sensed it. In fact, after you've broken through to the Daoyuo Jinxian realm, it won't be long before you awaken all your memories and fuse with your original bodies. The old man wanted to wait for you, but there's no need for that now. There's not much loss for you to fuse with your original bodies. Moreover, you didn't cultivate bitterly in this reincarnation. You've all been arranged with the best conditions and environments, Senior Yilan. Master, you Yilan? Chun Yin exclaimed in surprise. You're Chun Yin, the controller, the killing god, Chun Hao's sister. Cough, cough, cultivation partner, ah? I'm Long Ting. I'm so powerful. Ha! Long Ting immediately laughed complacently, laughing so hard that her body trembled. The other women, who had not felt much, began to connect the dots one by one. Their hearts were filled with an inexplicable feeling, but there was no doubt that they were all excited. Who was Yilan? Who was the controller, the killing god, Chen Hao? Including their own names, in their hearts, they were all high and mighty existences that were worshipped, envied, and revered by all the cultivators in the ancient chaos boundless world. All right, I'll undo the seal for you now and fuse with your original bodies. Chi, 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 chi. Beams of dazzling immortal light appeared between Yilan's fingers and entered the women's foreheads. Buzz, boom, rumble. In an instant, the seals of the women's reincarnation were completely undone. A terrifying roar sounded in their minds, and the sealed original bodies began to fuse with their current selves. Chi, chi. Not long after the women began to fuse with their original bodies, the doors of time and space opened again. Sister-in-law? Senior Yilan. This is... Why are the sisters-in-law? Why are they all here? Are they awakening? Figures descended one after another. They were like a coiling dragon, and the aura around them was countless times more terrifying. They were already at the peak of the late-stage Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Li Yang and Chun Ling's spiritual altars were even more dazzling, and their immortal spiritual qi was even more oppressive. The two of them breathed in and out as if they had already become one. Du Jing, Lan Feng, Edo Tai, Fan Dongsheng, and Pan Dong Lu had also become many times stronger. They had all stepped into the peak of the late stage of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. However, the one with the strongest aura among them was Chun Hao, who had 30% of Chun Hao's charm, but was slightly different from Chun Hao. Chun Nim was not tall, but just by standing there, he gave off an unshakable feeling. His whole body unconsciously released an awe-inspiring qi that seemed to connect the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Vast, boundless, and awe-inspiring. Sister-in-law Little Yin, Chun Nan smiled and called out softly. Her eyes were sparkling and translucent. Men didn't cry easily, but now, Chun Nan, who had grown to become the most powerful existence among Coiling Dragon and the others, had tears in his eyes. In the end, Chunan's gaze landed on Yilon. "Senior, do you have news of my brother? Will I be able to see my brother?" No one knew how much Chun-Nin missed his older brother. Since he was young, Chun Hao had been his idol, and he had always been the person he imitated and chased after. But now, to him, his innocent childhood was perhaps the happiest time of his life, because at that time, he could often be with his older brother. Ever since he stepped into the cultivation world, he had always been chasing after his brother's footsteps. Even in his dreams, he wanted to fight side by side with his brother. No one knew the position of this brotherhood in his heart. Yilon was afraid that little Yin and his sisters-in-law would be affected by their feelings and let them reincarnate, but Chun-Nin wasn't. Therefore, Chun-Nin could only suppress his feelings and cultivate crazily. He didn't ask for much. He only hoped to catch up to his brother one day and become his right-hand man. Now, he had surpassed Coiling Dragon, Du Jing, and the others by a large margin. "Boss." "Yes, boss. Why didn't I think of it? Senior Yilon must have summoned all of us here, because only news of boss would do this, right?" Hearing Chun-Nan's words, Du Jing, Coiling Dragon, and the others immediately came back to their senses. "That's right. Little Nan, your progress is astonishing." Yilan's eyes flashed as he stared at Chun-Nan for a moment, then said, "I had some luck. Senior, you flatter me. How was my brother now? How did you get news of him? Your brother's right here. Can't you ask me?" Seventh Life, who had been sitting with his legs crossed, finally stood up and said to Chun-Nan, "Seventh brother, don't interrupt." Chun-Nan didn't push him aside, but he called him seventh brother instead of brother. Moreover, he clearly didn't want to talk too much with him. In his heart, as well as everyone else's, there was only one Chun Hao. "Damn, I know, okay? Not only do I have news of my detestable true body, you might even be able to see his image in a moment," Seventh Life said. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Yilon and said, "Master, you've seen it for yourself. I'm just a puppet that isn't welcomed. Even though I'm extremely talented and several times more awesome than my true body, I'm still a puppet." "Little Seven, it's your own position that's not right, okay?" Nurse Lu Hui said. "Master, I hope you won't stop me. You should know my personality. Once I've decided on something, no one can change it. If you force me into a corner, I'll directly die for you to see. Just like this, there's no need to look for me. When I return again, I'll also bring with me supreme glory, glory that's even more powerful than this sovereign's. When I fuse with my true body, I'll show you." Buzz. However, Daluo Golden Wonderland's seventh life suddenly trembled and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Yilon smiled and shook his head, but didn't stop him. There were some things that couldn't be forced, not to mention Chun Hao's 9 lives' profound art. Even Si Xian's third life showed a strong sense of competition with his true body. Not to mention the seventh life, which seemed to be, or perhaps really was, more talented than Chun Hao's true body. How abnormal. It's just the Daluo Golden Wonderland, but he's already cultivated the greater teleportation art to the extreme. Among us, only little Nan can compare, as expected of Boss's seventh life. "How many years has it been?" Coiling Dragon and the others were aghast. "All right, don't worry about him. This is for you guys. Try it on." "Senior, is what he said true? Is he going to use this?" Chun-Nin asked after seeing the helmets that Yilon took out. They were very similar to the helmets of the second world, but had a very different aura. P.S. I still owe everyone 18 chapters. Today, I'll update 10 chapters. 1 chapter is the minimum. 9 chapters are supplementary. I'll return 9 chapters first. The next 9 chapters will be updated every hour. Chapter 1313. Yes, this is also called the Spirit Realm Helmet, but it is connected to a wider space, or to another real world. We call it the Immortal Realm space. Furthermore, to be able to communicate with the immortal realm of the great world of CND, your brother has already contacted the old man. Really? This is great. Senior, can we meet up with boss inside? Yes. However, You will only be able to meet up when you are on the path to becoming an immortal emperor. What is the immortal emperor's path? Sit down. When they finish fusing, Old Man will tell you more about it. Now, you can enter the celestial realm and have a look. You can just drip a drop of blood on it. Elon closed his eyes after he finished speaking. The unification of the ancient chaos great thousand worlds, especially for the peak existences like Chun Nan, Pan Long, and Du Jing, could stay here for hundreds or thousands of years. However, if they continue to stay here, their development would be restricted. The reason was simple: they had no opponents. Therefore, Yilon didn't stop the seventh anima from leaving. Most likely, the great world of CND was the place where geniuses gathered. Similarly, perhaps it was time for Chunhao's women and brothers and sisters to leave. They were the hope of ancient chaos. Others could forget, but Yilon, who deeply understood how powerful the master of the Shao clan's ancestor was, would never forget. 50,000 years might be the time when the real Shao clan's ancestor discovered the situation with ancient chaos. At that time, Yilon was unable to determine exactly what would happen. Even though ancient chaos had been unified, the restrictions on his body had been completely removed, and he had also advanced to the true immortal king realm, and his strength was rapidly increasing. It was still a waste of hundreds of millions of years. A person who was originally stronger than him, and whose talent was not inferior to his, how strong was he now? Elon didn't dare to imagine. Planet Dahua Academy, Dojo. In the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, the theory of Yin and Yang Soul's class had just ended. Sitting cross-legged, Si Xian was still immersed in the concept that her teacher had condensed, carefully comprehending it. It had been more than half a year. Si Xian did not have much time to think about Fatty due to the tight schedule. Although she missed him very much, she could not waste such a rare opportunity to cultivate. When a true immortal king imparted the Tao, not to mention imparting the most basic profundities of the great Tao, even a casual remark from him would benefit him for the rest of his life. How could it be wasted? Moreover, Si Xian had no choice but to train as hard as she could because of the abnormal Fatty in her subconscious. Humans are just like that. If you were with outstanding people, you would become outstanding. Birds of a feather flock together. It was the same principle, let alone a man and a woman who had developed feelings for each other. Sichuan had no choice but to work hard. Chun Si. Suddenly, a cultured and refined voice floated into Si Xian's ears. Am I disturbing you? Si Xian frowned slightly, and a trace of disgust appeared on her face. She suddenly opened her eyes and said angrily, "Get lost." I realized that I've really fallen in love with you. I admit that I came looking for you because I was still brooding over your first rejection. I'm a proud person and I don't want to lose to anyone, especially a fatty who is one level lower than me. Although his talent is not bad, in my opinion, nothing can compare to me. Shameless narcissist, Si Xian said disdainfully. After she finished speaking, she got up and left. However, the person followed her like a shadow. He seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll, but he was like a shooting star streaking across the sky. No matter how fast Si Xian sped up, she could not shake him off. This person was none other than the captain of the Starlight Squad, Morong Qianhua. At that time, I was just trying to vent my anger. But now, my heart tells me that you are the woman I need the most in my life. I hope you will seriously consider it. Morong Qianhua said in a seemingly serious manner. I've said it before. Give up. Si Xian said rudely. Anger rose in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. The only thing she could do was to return to her palace as soon as possible and block him outside. Otherwise, she would have to endure this fly that she could not chase away and could not scold away. Maybe you and Fatty are truly in love, and I shouldn't get involved. After all, as long as you're happy, it's my greatest happiness. Murong Qianhua's gentle voice continued to sound disgusting. However, anyone who heard this voice could feel that this person was speaking from the bottom of his heart. However, according to the exact information I've received, it's impossible for Fatty to come back alive. You? What nonsense are you talking about? Si Xian was slightly shocked. I'm not talking nonsense. I'm serious. If you don't believe me, you can ask the dean. Our academy only has him and one Ishue participating. The other two are external aid that the dean has invited at a high price. They're the direct disciples of the Shao clan of the Galaxy King, Shao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. They're a pair of Dao companions. External aid? The Shao clan? Xixian's heart skipped a beat. What mission are they participating in? The fight for resources in the Emperor's Star Secret Realm. The Emperor's Star Secret Realm is a space that is hundreds and thousands of times more terrifying than the primitive Secret Realm. It is a space that the immortal Emperor has specially condensed for himself. Those who enter it will basically become stepping stones for the awakening of the immortal Emperor's reincarnation. Impossible, he won't die. He will definitely come back alive. Qinxi, wake up. Originally, there were more than 3,000 forces participating. More than 10,000 people entered, and they were all genius disciples of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Shao Mantian and Feng Hanwei are the top geniuses of the great world of Xiandi. Moreover, it is said that before entering, Shao Mantian and Feng Hanwei thought that Fatty and Wan Ishue would be a burden. Not to mention this, there are even stronger young Master Saber and Sword Ding Hao and young Master Godspeed, Feng Wuxing. Each of them is 10 times stronger than Fatty. However, they are still not the strongest. The strongest two are the disciples of the new generation Sword King, the truly invincible Daluo, Qin Yang, and Miao Xian. However, Murong Qianhua paused for a moment before continuing. However, after the half-year competition ended, the leaders of all the forces joined forces to activate the aura of the tokens. When they started to summon, less than 10% of the cultivators came out. Their cultivation increased at an astonishing rate because they had already spent 1,500 years in there. What about Fatty? Xixian asked anxiously. Her intuition told her that Murong Qianhua was not lying. He hasn't come out yet. Furthermore, there is basically no possibility of him coming out. This is because the tokens on all of them are activated automatically after the time limit. Furthermore, they can only be activated once. Now, they have already become useless. Furthermore, Wan Ishue, Shao Mantian, Feng Hanwei, young Master Saber, and Sword Ding Hao, young Master Godspeed, Feng Wuxing, and the new generation Sword King's disciples, Qin Yang and Miao Xian, have not come out. With these people around, he and Wan Ishue are simply not a match for them. More importantly, the aura of the Emperor's Star Secret Realm has already completely disappeared. Chapter 13-14. Impossible. How can this be? Xixian muttered. That's the truth. The Emperor's Star Secret Realm uses the aura of the Primal Secret Realm to attract cultivators to enter and become stepping stones for the awakening of the spirits of all living beings. Once the conditions are met, it will naturally hide. That's an immortal Emperor-level concealment. No matter what, nothing will happen to him. I believe that nothing can stop his return. Xixian's eyes suddenly flashed with determination as she said in a deep voice. Qinxi, do you trust him that much? Thank you for telling me this, but please don't bother me in the future. It's impossible between you and me. Now, in the future, it's impossible. Xixian suddenly sped up and allowed the shameless person to follow her. However, she ignored him and turned a blind eye to him until she returned to her palace. Fatty, you'll definitely come back, right? Fatty, Chun Hao. Only now did Xixian feel that this seemingly harmless Fatty was just a stepping stone to open her heart. This Fatty was Chun Hao. He was cold, arrogant, and had slaughtered his way through. He was the killing god Chun Hao, whose name shook ancient chaos. She was too proud to lower her head to Chun Hao, and she wouldn't admit that she liked him. However, she could act freely with the Fatty. In fact, this was just a way for her to step down. Chun Hao, you were able to return to the ancient chaos great thousand worlds after your true self underwent nirvana. The spirits of all living beings are all obedient to you and are already destined to be your Tao companion. This is just the Emperor's Star Secret Realm. You can definitely do it. I'll wait for you. Si Xian looked at the endless starry sky through the window and muttered with determination. Has it disappeared? Several days ago, the new Sword King, Chen Taishu, stood on a lone island that was only 100 square kilometers wide. He looked into the distance, and his gaze seemed to pierce through the endless river of stars as he softly said, "The Sword King of the new generation, Chen Taishu, is looking into the distance." As expected, it's a great tribulation. Tribulation, it should be the reincarnation of the immortal emperor or Xiao Mantian or Feng Hanwei, who is the destined son of heaven. It could also be the soul of all living things. However, the greater possibility should be young noble saber and sword Ding Hao and young noble god walk Feng Wuxing. The possibility of someone else is not high. Chen Taishu's mind filtered through the information he had collected about the genius disciples who had entered the Emperor's Star secret realm, and he secretly speculated in his heart. It was naturally related to his disciple, Miao Xian. Although Miao Xian was Qin Yang's junior sister, her talent surpassed her senior brother Qin Yang, who was born with the body of the Sword Emperor. When Qin Yang was born, 10,000 swords would automatically bow down to him. However, Miao Xian was born with the body of the Sword Emperor. She was born with the body of the Sword Emperor. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never tasted defeat under the same conditions. She had an arrogant personality and viewed all the young elites in the world as nothing. Even if it was senior brother Qin Yang, she only interacted with him because of their relationship as senior brother Qin Yang. In reality, she didn't place him in her eyes either. With such a personality, it was natural that she would encounter many tribulations in her training. However, she had defied the heavens and changed her fate time and time again, and she had always been successful. No one knew that although she looked beautiful, her hands were stained with the blood of young geniuses. She had even comprehended the will of slaughter to an extremely high level. However, the slaughter sword Dao wasn't her strong suit. The emotionless sword Dao and the destruction sword Dao were even stronger. Without 10,000 years, you won't be able to come out. Everything depends on yourselves. Qi, the new Sword King, Chen Tai-su, pointed at the void after he finished speaking, and a milky white light suddenly flashed out. Soon after, he slowly closed his eyes. He was clearly still sitting there, but his entire aura had completely disappeared, as if he had turned into a part of the isolated island. 10,000 years. Senior Sword King said that it would take at least 10,000 years for there to be a result. Moreover, there might not be many who can survive. That's the Emperor's Star secret realm. Those who didn't come out have either died fighting for treasures or entered the immortal Emperor tomb. Now, even Senior Liu can't do anything. The only thing he can do is wait. Immortal Emperor tomb? Immortal Emperor tomb. We should have thought of this earlier. We shouldn't have activated the token at all. Or rather, when Elder Liu guessed that it wasn't the real primitive secret realm, we should have sent people in and brought everyone out. Sai, I thought that it would be a huge resource. Even if we couldn't obtain it, it would be a good opportunity for my disciples. Who would have thought? How many people can come out alive after entering the immortal Emperor tomb? That's controlled by the reincarnation of an immortal emperor. Outside the isolated island, the people who had waited for a full day finally received news from Chen Taishu. Among them was the dean of the University of Dahua, Cheng Wanxian. However, after receiving the news, they all fell into a discussion, feeling conflicted and regretful. They regretted not withdrawing from the competition when Elder Liu had deduced the approximate number of space-time laws. All of this happened after half a year was up. It had been more than 10 days since then. Chen Si, the dean invites you over. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, the dean invites you over. The next day, after leaving their respective training halls, Si Xian, Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian were all notified. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian were all surprised. They didn't know why the dean was looking for them, but Si Xian could vaguely guess the reason. Indeed, it was as expected. 10,000 years, maybe 10,000 years, or maybe even death, the Emperor's Star secret realm the immortal emperor tomb, at least 10,000 years, and other information made Si Xian's delicate body tremble again. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian were indescribably surprised. At the same time, they were also worried for Fatty, especially after hearing that there were several monstrous geniuses from the Daluo Golden Wonderland who were very famous in the great world of CND. They were even more worried for Fatty. Dean, if it's really in the immortal emperor tomb, can Fatty Bro enter the immortal emperor's space? Ao Guang asked. Of course he can. As long as the Emperor Star's secret realm is still in the great world of CND, there won't be any problems. Nothing can block the aura of the immortal world space, because it corresponds to the existence of the great world of CND. However, he also needs to have a consciousness to enter the immortal world space. The Dean replied, all of you, me, and even someone as powerful as the new generation Sword King Chun Taishu can only wait. Perhaps, after the Star River King knows about this, he can't do anything. He's just a direct descendant of a Shao clan. The Shao clan has countless geniuses, let alone a mere Grand Luo. Even if he has the ability to do anything, the Star River King won't easily act. I called you here to let you be mentally prepared. Don't delay your own plans because you're waiting for Fatty. Now that things have come to this, we can only resign ourselves to fate. Chen Si, I'm sorry, Chen Wanxiang said sincerely. Chapter 13:15. He will come back alive. Si Xian smiled bitterly, but her eyes were resolute. Yes, I firmly believe that Fatty Bro will come back alive, and in an incomparably coquettish manner. Sister-in-law, don't worry. Fatty Bro even promised to go to Gold Dipper Planet with me. Furthermore, my intuition has always been accurate. Fatty Bro is my boss, How can he die before I die? You might not know why I was willing to submit to Fatty Bro, but I can tell you now, it's because when I first saw Fatty Bro, my intuition came from the depths of my soul. He will be the boss that I, Ao Guang, will follow for the rest of my life and bring me unparalleled glory. Monkey, don't tell me there's something wrong with your sexual orientation. K off. I'm serious. You don't understand this feeling. I don't either, but I'm sure that Fatty Bro will come back. Thank you. Ao Guang, you don't need to comfort me. I believe more than you that he will come back alive to see me. Cough, cough. Sister-in-law, I'm not comforting you. Everything I say comes from the bottom of my heart. Is it fate? Dean Sheng Wanxiang looked at Ao Guang and thought to himself. Shortly after, he nodded and said, all right, you guys go and cultivate well. Don't be discouraged when Fatty Bro comes back. Yes. Buzz, 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 come here. In the Emperor Star's secret realm, Chun Hao waved his hand and bound the crazed one Yixue to his side. Suppress him. Buzz, 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 buzz. Mysterious runes overflowed from the space between Chun Hao's eyebrows, directly imprinting on Wan Yixue's glabella. Wan Yixue let out a scream of terror. His crazed and unfocused eyes finally regained consciousness. Looking at Fatty Bro, who was holding him in his arms, Wan Yixue's tears flowed out. He turned his face to the side, not daring to look at Chun Hao, and said, Fatty, you just like to see me make a fool of myself, right? I'm begging you. Let me into your mind. I don't want to face it again. You pig, you don't believe Fatty Bro's words? I already told you. This is the immortal Emperor tomb. What is this? It can block almost everything, but in front of it, we have no secrets. Even the mental space exists in name only. Then let me die. I don't want to drag you down. F***CK. Who do you think I am? Since I, Fat Bro, brought you here, I will bring you out. If we die together. If we live together. Fatty, I know you're a good person, but I can't let you die with me because of my selfishness. I've already made up my mind. As Wan Yixue said this, he suddenly thought of something. His face suddenly became so red that it almost dripped blood. However, he resolutely raised his head, looked into Chun Hao's eyes, and said in an extremely low voice, unless you want me, and dual cultivate with me. 1,500 years. They had already stepped into the Emperor's Star secret realm for a total of 1,500 years. They had fought countless times, killed countless times, and faced countless life and death situations. Chun Hao, the god of slaughter who had once dominated the world with his own strength, no longer had that kind of strength that could sweep across those of the same level. Instead, every step he took was difficult, and every step he took was filled with trepidation. Even so, the dangerous situations where he barely managed to survive in the cracks of death were always with him. The powerful Xiao Mantian and his wife, the high and mighty young master of saber and sword Ding Hao, who looked down upon the world, the young master of divine movement, Feng Wuying, who possessed incredible battle prowess, and the two peerless sword geniuses, Qin Yang and Miao Xian, were all existences that Chun Hao couldn't fight against for the time being. In these 1,500 years, Chun Hao had encountered these experts, but he could only avoid them. However, the main reason was Wan Yishui. If not for Wan Yishui, the god of slaughter Chun Hao would not have any restrictions. With his concealment skills and great teleportation technique, he could go anywhere he wanted. This was something that Wan Yishui had seen very clearly after experiencing many dangers together. At the beginning, she could only follow the fatty because of her desire to survive. But now, Wan Yishui finally did not want to persist, because the token had been activated, but she had not been summoned out. To be precise, she had not connected with the outside world's summoning aura. Where was her hope? Moreover, the fatty had already sacrificed enough for her. At the same time, she also saw that in the near future, the fatty would be destroyed because of her. Rather than dragging the fatty down with her, it was better for her to let go early. After all, in this immortal emperor tomb, even entering the fatty's mind was useless. No matter what, she was filled with gratitude towards the wretched and shameless fatty, because she knew that if the fatty wanted to give up on her, she would have no way to resist. She would have died long ago. How could she have survived until now? And in this situation, dual cultivation with Chun Hao's soul and flesh, linking her mind and will, was the only way to save her life and not be a burden to Chun Hao. It could also help Chun Hao. After 1,500 years of life and death together, Wan Yishui had no complaints and was willing to give herself to the fatty. Even if she died in the end, it could be considered as repaying the fatty for taking care of her for 1,500 years. This was love. This was love. People were afraid of falling in love. In the past, the Prince Charming in her dreams should have been a handsome, talented young man with unparalleled combat strength. Even though fate had entangled her with the fatty, and she had been amazed by the fatty's amazing talent time and time again, she had never thought that she would fall in love with the fatty. This was because the fatty's image was not flattering at all. He was completely different from the perfect Tao companion she had envisioned. But now, the fatty was the most perfect person in her eyes. So handsome, so confident, so cute. Please don't vomit. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. In fact, once a person fell in love, their appearance was nothing more than fleeting clouds. The fatty looked at Wan Yishui, who had become tender and charming due to shyness, and her eyes were filled with pleading and endless emotions. He was stunned and awkwardly scratched his head. What to do? This brother had promised the girls to keep his chastity, but it seemed this was really going with the flow. It was very, very natural, and it was natural to the point of being forced. What about agreeing? Should I agree? Or should I agree? What about being a beast, or a beast? I can't be worse than a beast. I really don't know how to begin, and I don't know how to end. Sister, should this? You don't need to take responsibility. Everything was done by my own will. It has nothing to do with you. Your Tao companion is prettier than me, and has an S-grade divine ability. No matter what, she is stronger than me. Please don't worry. If we can get out of here alive, I will pretend that nothing happened between us. As long as you occasionally remember me, if you can secretly see me. Cough, cough. Chun Hao was a little dumbfounded. Wasn't this the legendary mistress? Sister Shui was actually willing to be his mistress. Chapter 13:16. F***CK. I can still be so charming even after transforming into a fatty. This is too unbelievable. However, I seem to have already agreed. But, since you said so, are you serious? The fatty, who seemed to be a little conflicted and embarrassed, suddenly revealed a surprised and excited expression. He rubbed his palms as he looked at Wan Ishue and said. Wan Ishue was slightly stunned, and a faint sadness flashed across the depths of her eyes. Then, she nodded with certainty and took the initiative to throw herself into the fatty's arms. She leaned her face against the extremely spacious and soft chest that was even more awesome than a woman's. She hugged the waist that she could not completely hug and was like a little bird that was dependent on someone. Over the course of 1,500 years, there were many times when it was unavoidable to have some intimate contact, but it was unavoidable. From beginning to end, the fatty had never really taken advantage of Wan Ishue, not even the simplest of hugs. And now, Chun Hao finally slowly raised his hands that were placed at unknown places and hugged Wan Ishue's slender and weak waist. Shue, the person, was like her name. Wan Ishue was like a girl made of water, just like her azure silk jade wave technique. Perhaps only a woman like her would be able to create a cultivation method that could make one's soul happy and comfortable. Her delicate body trembled. Wan Ishue used all her strength and tightly hugged Chen Hao. It was as if she wanted to rub herself into the fatty's body. That kind of strong feeling was expressed incisively and vividly. There was no longer any concealment. A woman's feelings came slowly. But when it really came, it was much stronger and more lasting than a man's. Just like Wan Ishue, who had just taken her first step, she could no longer restrain the feelings in her heart. The harem army has one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Cough, cough. I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm originally pure, but I can't help it. I can only surrender. What Wan Ishue did not know was that the fatty was muttering in his mind. But at this time, if I still use this disguise, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Chun Hao suddenly thought of a problem. It had to be said that Chun Hao, who was naturally romantic, was more serious than anyone else when it came to feelings. Every time he accepted a woman, he would definitely not be perfunctory. Once he accepted a woman, he would have to shoulder the responsibility of a man. In his opinion, those who did not have the goal of getting married were all hooligans. In this place, they naturally did not have the goal of becoming Tao companions. But he didn't want to be a hooligan. That was despicable. Wan Ishue felt that although this was the first time the fatty had truly held her waist, it was just like that, without any extra movements, and there was no reaction for a long time. This made Wan Ishue a little disappointed, especially when she thought of the fatty's Tao partner, Si Xian. She was even more disappointed. Perhaps the fatty really didn't like her from the beginning to the end? With such a devastatingly beautiful Tao companion, there was indeed nothing about her that attracted him. However, thinking that Si Xian still retained her primordialine body, Wan Ishue's disappointed heart became slightly excited. Will I be fatty's first woman? This thought uncontrollably grew in Wan Ishue's mind. If so, his memory of me will definitely be even more profound. I don't expect to be with him day and night. As long as he thinks of me a few more times and looks at me, that will be enough. I must let go of all my reservations. Thinking of this, Wan Ishue suddenly gathered her courage, tiptoed, raised her head, and closed her eyes. Her heartbeat suddenly sped up by several times, and her bright red lips approached the fatty's face. Shyness, excitement, anticipation, excitement, all kinds of emotions attacked Wan Ishue's nerves. But wait, the fatty's voice suddenly stopped Wan Ishue. Wan Ishue, who was startled, immediately widened her eyes. The fire that ignited in her heart was immediately extinguished by the torrential rain. She looked at the fatty with tears in her eyes. Don't misunderstand, Sister Shue. Big Brother has some secrets that I must tell you first. Otherwise, Big Brother can't bear to tell you, and also let you down, phew. Wan Ishue, who was almost nervously holding her breath, finally let out a sigh of relief when she heard the fatty's words. Her expression, which was close to tears, was much better. Seeing this, the fatty couldn't help but smile. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand to pinch one Ishue's nose and said, "I just found out that you're so cute. All right, back to the main topic. The first thing Big Brother wants to tell you is that I have already cultivated the Great Change movement technique to the ultimate realm." "Oh, you're really amazing." Juan Ishue said absent-mindedly. She was already clear about how high the fatty's talent was. It wasn't strange for him to cultivate any divine ability to the ultimate realm. But halfway through, she suddenly cried out in shock and looked at the smiling fatty. Great change movement technique? Fatty, you can't be saying your current appearance is a disguise, right? The truth is so. Sigh, I can't help it. I'm too ugly. Ugly to the depths of my soul. People vomit when they see me. Flowers wilt when they see me. Big Brother, I'm really embarrassed to see people with my true appearance. It's not my fault that I'm ugly, but it's wrong to come out and scare people. Don't you think so? Nonsense. Then restore your original body, and let me see. I don't believe that I'm as ugly as you say. Buzz. The fatty didn't say anything else, and a mysterious aura suddenly surged out from his body. Every cell in his body seemed to come alive in an instant. Rays of light bloomed, making one Ishue unable to see what was happening. She only knew that the fatty was restoring his original appearance. Hiss! The last ray of light disappeared. One Ishue let out a scream. Her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth, staring blankly at the figure in front of her. "See, I still scared you." "Sigh, Sister Shue. It's not too late for you to regret," the figure said in a rather sad and lonely tone. "No, fatty, don't misunderstand. In my eyes, no matter what you look like, it doesn't affect me, really. I like you. I like you, your heart, and not your appearance. What does beauty and ugliness count for? I really don't care. It's just that I was scared when I saw you, really," Wan Ishue said as she hugged Chunhao's waist again. Although she said so, she had to admit in her heart that it was ugly, really ugly. How could a person be so ugly? Of course, like she said, she didn't care about beauty or ugliness. "Sigh, you've already closed your eyes and don't dare to look at me. I know that you're telling the truth, but I'm really so ugly that it can shake the heavens and move the earth. Seeing me, you don't have any interest, right? Take me." Now, Wan Ishue's body trembled, but immediately she raised her head and kissed Chunhao's lips. She was straightforward, without the slightest bit of reluctance, without ambiguity. She wanted to prove that she really didn't care. But haha. The fatty laughed lightly and stretched out his hand, blocking Wan Ishue's soft lips. At the same time, his body once again flickered with light. The dazzling light caused Wan Ishue to widen her eyes. She was smart, and at the first moment, she revealed a faint smile and spat out a disdainful sentence. "Liar," I said. "How could there be such an ugly person in the world?" Chapter 13:17. The dazzling light disappeared, and Wan Ishue, who was speaking, was dumbfounded. Smile, it was still that slightly curved mouth, like a harmless smile, but at this moment, it was filled with an evil charm. What kind of figure was that? Handsome, elegant, a pear tree suppressing begonia. So handsome that it was earth-shattering. So handsome that heaven and earth could not tolerate it. An extraordinarily handsome, angular face, star-like bright, deep, distant eyes, from head to toe exuded a manly aura that would make any woman's heart palpitate. Wan Ishue was stunned, dumbfounded, but immediately, puff, Wan Ishue burst out laughing, covering her mouth. "Fatty, am I so easy to fool? There is no such ugly person in the world, but there is also no such handsome person, right? The ultimate realm of the Great Change technique. No matter what you transform into, it will be the same as the real thing. Besides, no matter what you look like, it really doesn't matter to me. Why are you so handsome?" This time, it was Chunhao's turn to be dumbfounded. What the hell was this? This is my real appearance. Chun Hao felt a headache. It seemed it should be. Chun Hao temporarily could not prove that his current appearance was real. Just as Wan Yishui said, the ultimate realm of the Great Change technique. No matter what he transformed into, for Wan Yishui, she could not tell whether it was real or fake. Therefore, what was fake could be real, and what was real could be fake. It all depended on what Wan Yishui thought, but Sister Shui, this is the appearance of Ming Zun, whether you believe it or not. But if we do that, you will understand that brother is not lying to you. Oh, Wan Yishui's face reddened, looking around at the seal enchantment that Chun Hao forcibly propped up, seeing that the enchantment was gradually cracking, obviously unable to withstand the situation for long. Although Wan Yishui felt embarrassed, she still lowered her head and took the initiative to say in a mosquito-like voice, Then, let's begin. What's the hurry? Chun Hao waved his hand again. Wait for me to finish. The second thing I want to tell you is that I have a Tao companion. I know, I don't care. You don't have to take responsibility. Everything, you have no choice. I am willing. Cough, cough. I have to say, I have a Tao companion, and there are many. Not only the Chun Si, directly. Chun Si is ranked last. No, it can't be. Many. Chun Si is ranked last? Wan Yishui stared blankly for a moment. Then he seemed to have thought of something. A trace of excitement flashed across his face as he said, Why are you telling me this? Oh. When Wan Yishui was caught off guard, Chun Hao suddenly attacked. Rather than letting this girl take the initiative to start, he was the first to break through. He was. Facing a woman, Chun Yishui, Chun was. But there was one thing. Once Chun Yishui made a decision, he would not be perfunctory, nor would he be indecisive. At this time, he was the decisive him of killing. Although Chun Hao used his actions to stop Wan Yishui's question and did not answer, the smart Wan Yishui, who did not lose her rationality even in the midst of passionate love, understood that since the fatty told her the second point, it meant that he did not want to avoid responsibility, but to take responsibility. After all, if he pulled up his pants and did not recognize her, there was simply no need to tell Wan Yishui these things. Similarly, Wan Yishui could confirm Chun Hao's thoughts. The most important point was that Chun Hao had many Tao companions. He was not afraid of one, but he was afraid of many. If there was only Si Xian, then there might be one for all living beings. But if there were already many, what harm was there in adding one more? A warm current surged in the depths of Wan Yishui's heart, but very quickly, she lost the ability to think. Hug, kiss, wretched claws that wandered on the graceful and delicate body. It had been a long time, but it was practiced and full of skill. As an experienced killing god, Chun Hao, against Wan Yishui, who maintained her primordialine body, was absolutely at ease. And Chun Hao, who had not had intimate contact with a woman for a long time, was really excited and frozen in his actions this time, especially when he took off the robe and soft armor and really touched the soft skin that was as soft as water. It made Chun Hao completely ignite himself. After tasting the forbidden fruit, after such a long time, even if Chun Hao's state of mind and will were strong, the delicate balance of yin and yang in his body would be tilted. And now, without a doubt, this tilt was completely detonated. Under the dry firewood and the raging fire, the fusion of ice and fire, the fusion of yin and yang, after more than 1,500 years together, finally merged today. Boom! The moment when the soul and the body truly merged, the two actually directly entered the highest realm of the fusion of soul and body. At this moment, the two of them obviously did not have any thoughts, but it had to be said that this point, whether it was Chun Hao or Wan Yishui, neither could have thought of it, and also did not think that it could be done so easily. But this seemingly miraculous and inconceivable fusion of soul and body was actually natural, a matter of course. 1,500 years of life and death together, hundreds of tribulations and thousands of difficulties, 9 deaths and 1 life. A single man and a single woman naturally collided into the sparks of love. Only, one was unwilling to start, the other felt that there would be no end. Now, facing more and more terrifying danger to break the deadlock. But just like this, could it be so simple to directly enter the highest realm of the fusion of soul and body? It could not. After all, this was not just a matter of emotional compatibility. Even when Chun Hao was with Xiao Mei, Lung Ning Huan, and Lung Ning Lu for the first time, he could not do it. The most important reason was that Wan Yishui had automatically activated the Azure Silk Jade Wave technique. This was a kind of extremely soft and gentle water, profound meaning. Just like when Chun Hao first encountered Wan Yishui's Azure Silk Jade Wave technique, that kind of feeling was like a cleansing of the soul. And now, in the fusion of soul and body, the Azure Silk Jade Wave technique that was naturally activated produced profound meaning and effects. Who knows how many times more than when Wan Yishui was at her level. This was simply a peerless technique that was specially created for dual cultivation. If one did not personally experience it, one would not be able to feel its magic. Of course, even Wan Yishui, who created this technique, would not be able to discover its true value before she maintained her primordialine body. Using it to condense an illusion in battle? That was like using a priceless antique blue and white porcelain to wash one's feet. A waste. Hiss. Kacha. Boom. Not long after, the protective boundary that Chun Hao had originally condensed was annihilated by the extremely terrifying pressure of the immortal Emperor Tomb. In a hidden valley, Chun Hao and Wan Yishui, who were already in the fusion of yin and yang, did not feel anything, allowing the terrifying pressure to descend upon them without any reaction, doing what they should do. Chapter 13:18. Even Wan Yishui, who couldn't withstand such a terrifying pressure before, wasn't affected at all. She was immersed in the endless beauty and comfort, welcoming someone's gentle whipping. The great circulation, because they had entered the highest realm of the fusion of spirit and body, had already begun. Endless immortal light twined and thousands of Tao rolled. It cleansed their souls and bodies. Rub, rub, rub. Master is indeed a person of great fortune. In the deepest part of Chun Hao's mind, there was a solid figure whose gender could not be determined. To be more precise, it was neither male nor female. It was not even human. Even though Chun Hao see do not hear, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not hear, do not know, do not see do not. Here this figure was naturally the old god, who had followed Chun Hao's nirvana of self. Moreover, after this fellow had absorbed a huge amount of spiritual items that made Chun Hao vomit blood, it had finally completed its nirvana of self and obtained its current golden body. It was neither male nor female, like a human and like an artifact. Like an artifact, it was a strange accessory that grew directly from its body. Chun Hao had named it the 100 Transformations Vajra. It was truly 100 transformations. It could transform into any powerful weapon, protective equipment, pill furnace, flying device, and so on. Water can carry all things. At the extreme, it can carry thousands of Tao. This is obviously caused by the aura of the green silk jade ripple technique. This is definitely the strongest dual cultivation technique I've ever seen. There's no other. Although the old god couldn't see the current state of the two, he could judge the extent of the fusion of yin and yang based on the changes in the aura, in Chun Hao's mind, and the effects. Sigh. This is depressing. I thought that it wouldn't be long before Master had to rely on my awesome ability. Now it seems like it will take a while. Old God shook his head that was as sharp as an arrow and said, from the moment he awakened until now, it had already been 1,500 years. Naturally, this was the time he spent in the Emperor's Star secret realm. But in such a long period of time, his true self had successfully undergone nirvanic rebirth. Along with Chun Hao's rise in cultivation base, his strength had actually skyrocketed, yet he hadn't displayed his overpowered combat prowess even once. At the very most, he could only answer questions and answer questions. He thought that his chance would come soon after entering the immortal Emperor tomb, a place filled with dangers at every step, but now, his master had slept with Wan Yishui. So be it, the effects were so strong. The god was sure that Wan Yishui's growth would be terrifying. Similarly, his master's benefits would also be terrifying. However, I will have my chance in the end. Not to mention the spirits of all living beings in the Emperor's Star secret realm. Even those monsters who are temporarily stronger than my master will not be able to deal with them after they enter the core of the immortal Emperor tomb. At that time, it will be my time to shine. Hee hee. The endlessly charming scene finally calmed down as Chun Hao and Wan Yishui stepped onto the peak at the same time. The great cycle at this time could be considered to have truly begun. At this moment, the two of them, whose souls had become clear, finally felt the great circulation that could be described as terrifying and inconceivable. S-U-Z-U-E-T. S-S-S-S. Of Esgodz's azure, silk, jade, ripple technique. In a moment, Chun Hao understood the reason. Feeling Wan Yishui's soft and delicate body, he was slightly excited. I really didn't expect this to be an extremely powerful dual cultivation technique. With it, what does Xiao Shui and the others have to worry about? Phew! Chun Hao let out a long sigh of relief in his heart, calmed his mind, and merged into the fusion of yin and yang with Wan Yishui. Although she was forced by the circumstances, it had to be said that Wan Yishui was a woman that Chun Hao willingly accepted. Now that she had given him the precious Yuanyin body, no matter what, Chun Hao had to cherish it. 1. Chun Hao activated the recitation of the general outline of the great Tao in the depths of his soul, pushing forward the comprehension of the boundless laws of Tao, the state of mind, the will, the 7 emotions, the 6 desires, and the other most fundamental mysteries, all of which appeared in his connected and fused soul. Cultivation, increasing his strength, was the most important thing. At the same time, Wan Yishui, who had awakened, was also happy and excited. She activated the origin of the azure, silk, jade ripple technique to the extreme, merging it into the heart lake of the two of them. With the heart belonging, the mind would be at ease. Wan Yishui, who had given herself to the fatty, not to mention the joy of the fusion of soul and body at this moment, the true balance of yin and yang, as well as the transcendence of the soul, made her feel like she had been reborn. This was the transcendence of the state of mind. Even if she did not do anything now, it would be a new breakthrough on the martial way for Wan Yishui. Furthermore, how could she not do anything? She and the fatty was just the beginning. And now, in the fusion of soul and body, the appearance of the origin of the soul also allowed Wan Yishui to clearly see the appearance of the fatty. Although she did not want to admit it, but her happiness index had definitely soared. There was no other way. Who did not want their man to be handsome? Ancient chaos, great thousand world, in the deepest part of the temple. The women in the cycle of reincarnation had finally finished their fusion and awakening. Each and every one of them had mixed feelings, tightly hugging each other. Although they were not in an absolute cycle of reincarnation, and Yilan had also provided the best cultivation conditions, reincarnation was reincarnation, and the improvement it brought to them was considerable, especially the improvement of the soul and the state of mind. At the very least, their mental states of cultivation wouldn't be affected because of Chun Hao's departure. This was a kind of precipitation, a kind of buffer. This is the spiritual helmet that connects to the space of the immortal world. Among you, little Hui and little Wu, if activated here, should be born in the space of the immortal world. If, in the great world of CND, using their spiritual helmets, should be born in the space of the immortal world of the great world of CND. This is because your real place of birth and not because of ancient chaos. Of course, if your real place of birth belongs to the great thousand world and has the strength to contend with the immortal emperor and ancient chaos, you may be born in your place of birth. The others, no matter where they are, will be born in our ancient chaos. Hao was born on Earth. So, little Hui and little Wu, you can decide whether to enter now or wait until the great world of CND. To the great world of CND. These years, your improvement in ancient chaos is very shocking, including Chun Nan, Pam Long, and the others. With your current strength, even in the great world of CND, among those of the same realm, you are all extremely outstanding existences. Our ancient chaos has just started, and now you're already standing at the top. The great world of CND is the most suitable world for you to grow. However, and Xi have already told me about the situation there, and the great world of CND is the most suitable for the growth of geniuses. So, this time, I have gathered all of you here to send you on your way. Chapter 1319. I'll enter from here. Helian Wuzi made her choice after a slight hesitation. After all, Chun Hao was born on Earth. Even if she became an immortal emperor, she couldn't be with Chun Hao in the immortal realm space. Me too, Lu Hui said without hesitation. However, I feel that my birthplace might not be ancient chaos. Little Hui, what did you awaken? I don't know. When I was with Brother Hao, there was once when our souls merged together and an illusion appeared. Brother Hao said it was the moon, a small planet very close to Earth. I didn't take it seriously before, but now, as I cultivate, I often awaken some memories hidden in the depths of my mind that don't belong to the Sky River sector. There's the moon. If that's the case, I should be the same as Brother Hao from the greater thousand worlds near Earth. There's such a thing? You're already the reincarnation of an immortal emperor, but you can still awaken memories that don't belong to the greater thousand worlds. Could it be you have another origin? Yilan said with a little surprise. I'm just guessing. You'll know when you go in. Okay, this is your spirit helmet. Go in. Remember, directly lock onto the path of the immortal emperor. You could do anything else. After you go in, contact me. My number is ***********. Okay. Chi. Beams of resplendent light rose into the air as Chun Hao's women and siblings activated their spirit realm helmets and stepped into the world of immortals. Unfortunately, the little nurse Lu Hui was not born on Earth as she wished. She was born in ancient chaos like the other women. This made her slightly disappointed, but there was nothing she could do. Strange, what's wrong with this girl? It's been a month since I came back, but she hasn't logged into the immortal realm space once. How? Or hasn't logged in either. He probably hasn't completed the mission yet. Yilan, who was also born in the vast thousand worlds of the immortal world, did not spend much time to gather everyone together after receiving the message from the crowd. However, what made Yilan slightly puzzled was that Xi hadn't logged into the immortal realm space for nearly a month. However, Yilan was not worried that something would happen to Xi and Chun Hao. Of course, Xi wasn't affected by the news about Chun Hao. She hadn't logged in yet because of the once-in-a-decade friendly match between Dahua University and Tanglong University. Although Xi did not qualify for the competition, she was the owner of an S-grade supernatural ability. She was qualified to watch the battle and embarked on the journey to Tanglong. Chun Hao's eighth life, Chen Ritian, Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian had all obtained the qualifications to participate in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Just like Xi the 5 members of the Carnage battle team were qualified to watch the battle. The most famous players in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm were undoubtedly Murong Qianhua, Xinyuan Chun, and Tang Hu. They were also the 3 strongest players in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Dean Chung Wanxiang led the team, followed by the Pavilion Masters. The top 1,000 experts in both realms, as well as the newcomers with potential, were all qualified to watch the battle. Without a doubt, this was the most important event in the once-in-a-decade competition for the 2 academies. Whoever could achieve outstanding results in the competition would definitely be rewarded with contribution points and would be able to gather a lot of popularity. Unfortunately, killing god Chun Hao, who should have been able to shine brightly, had lost this opportunity. This competition, in the Daluo Golden Wonderland, had become the performance of Tanglong University's #1 Grand Heavenly Realm Xichao. Even Chun Hao's 8th life, Chun Ri Tian, had been defeated. Not to mention Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian. A true great era had descended, and geniuses were emerging one after another. Who was the true genius? What would the loss of invincibility and the wavering of the belief in invincibility bring? Chun Hao, who was in the tomb of the immortal emperor in the Emperor Star Mystic Realm, naturally knew nothing of this. Hiss, under the great circulation, the two of them, whose souls and bodies were fused, seemed to be surrounded by strands of flawless, translucent, milky, white threads. They wrapped around their bodies layer by layer like silk, and gradually their figures could not be seen at all. They had turned into a cocoon, immersed in the highest realm of the fusion of spirit and flesh. The two could not feel the passage of time at all. The cycle of their bodies and the great cycle between them gradually evolved into the cycle of heaven and earth in the surrounding space. Unknowingly, the two had entered a state of emptiness. The light of wisdom shone in their minds. Their comprehension increased by several folds. Their speed of comprehension increased by several folds, and their tempering increased by several folds. It was as if they had entered a state of enlightenment. The terrifying pressure of the tomb of the immortal emperor did not weaken in the slightest, but the two, who had turned into a cocoon, were no longer affected. A cool, pure, and soft mass of energy slowly flowed through Chun Hao's meridians. Wherever it passed, it brought about a pleasant feeling that could not be described with words. This kind of feeling could only be comprehended by the cultivator himself. It was like the pleasure brought by the transformation of his meridians and the advancement of his realm. The only difference was that this energy gave Chun Hao a feeling that was countless times more comfortable than before. In a hazy state, in a state of semi-consciousness, Chun Hao had a desire to be immersed in this wonderful feeling forever. That was the primordial yin of a young girl. The primordial yin of one Yixue. When a cultivator obtained the primordial yin of a young girl, it was like obtaining the most precious source energy of a young girl. It contained the purest source of a young girl's physique and was extremely beneficial to the cultivator. This was also one of the reasons why many evil cultivators were so happy to pluck the yin to supplement the yang. Kacha, 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 like a silkworm breaking out of its cocoon, the milky white cocoon that enveloped Chun Hao and one Yixue began to crack like an eggshell. Rays of bright light blossomed from the cracks. Immediately, a pair of hands pushed open the tiny cracks and took the lead to reach out. Boom! A roar! The eggshell burst. Amidst one Yixue's screams, Chun Hao put away his spear, stood up, and roared to the sky. Then, one Yixue's screams evolved into a sharp, resonant, and clear howl, which merged with Chun Hao's vigorous and rough howl. Boom! 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 In an instant, it was as if thunder had exploded in the ninth heaven, resounding through the world. The clouds rolled, and the pressure of the tomb of the immortal emperor dispersed in all directions, not daring to compete. Hiss, hiss, hiss. At the same time, the two people's bodies flashed with light. Chun Hao and one Yixue's naked bodies became neatly dressed, and Chun Hao also turned into a fatty. Chapter 13:20. When the whistling stopped, one Yixue could feel her body's astonishing improvement. Her emotions surged, especially when she saw Chun Hao return to his fatty form. She felt as if she was dreaming. Was she really with him? Had she really improved so much after just one session of cultivation? The genuine feeling of power proved that all of this was real. Even the redness on their faces had not completely faded. Their bodies still had the scent of each other. Are we for real? Do you want to try again? I feel like I'm dreaming. Wan Ishue glared at the fatty. I don't know how much time has passed. 130 years and 4 days. Of course, this is the time in the Emperor Star's secret realm. Chen Hao said with certainty. Actually, even Chen Hao did not know how much time had passed. Immersed in the fusion of yin and yang, he had completely forgotten about the passage of time. More accurately, he had no concept of time. It felt like an instant, but it also felt like billions of years. As for how much time had passed, it was impossible to determine. However, the old god could accurately time it. Haha, dual cultivation, as expected of dual cultivation. Under the secret realm's space-time laws, my battle strength has at least doubled in a short 100 years. Sister Shui, how about you? The fatty asked. My improvement is even greater. My battle strength has increased by at least 5 times. My body, soul, and state of mind have all undergone a transformation. It feels like I've been reborn. I've never felt so strong before. Wan Ishue could not control her excitement. Look, the same pressure in the immortal Emperor tomb can't do anything to me. Not bad, but is dual cultivation really so powerful? Among the people I know, although their improvement speed has increased a lot after dual cultivation, it is not as terrifying as ours. Wan Ishue said. She, who had never dual cultivated, naturally did not know what the highest realm of dual cultivation meant. Of course, she also did not know how powerful her green silk jade ripple technique was. Then I have to thank you. The fatty smiled slightly, and very naturally, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, lightly kissed Wan Ishue's cherry lips, and said. Wan Ishue, who had tasted the forbidden fruit for the first time, did not avoid it. She could not avoid it, but her face instantly turned red. Obviously, she was still unable to adapt. Why thank me? Your Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique has an incomparably powerful dual cultivation effect. Using it in battle is simply a waste of God's gift. However, using it in battle is also a form of cultivation for it. You should continue to use it in the future. Furthermore, cooperate with me, and at the same time integrate the lingering love between you and me into it. That way, the power will definitely increase by several times. Ha ha! The fatty held on to Wan Ishue's waist as he spoke. How can that be? Why not? It will only strengthen the influence of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Previously, when you used it, you only merged your state of mind into the realm of the most gentle water. It is indeed comfortable, but those with strong willpower will not be affected at all, such as me. However, if you can merge the intoxicating emotions of the 7 emotions and 6 desires into it, the effect will definitely have a qualitative breakthrough. Then wouldn't it become an evil art? Evil arts? What was an evil art? As long as you don't harm others to benefit yourself, then it can't be called an evil art. Using yin to replenish yang, yang to replenish yin, and indiscriminately slaughtering the innocent to increase one's cultivation level is called an evil technique. In my opinion, what is evil is only the person. It has nothing to do with the cultivation technique. Oh, the next time we cultivate, I will personally teach you the Secular Heart Sutra. This is a supreme cultivation technique that cultivates the 7 emotions and 6 desires. When combined with your Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique, it will have a shocking effect. Let's go. It's time to test the effects of our cultivation. Chi-Chi. Under the boundless pressure of the immortal Emperor tomb, the two of them soared into the sky and flew towards the depths. The immortal Emperor tomb, as the name suggested, was the tomb of the immortal emperor. The immortal emperor was an existence that had transcended the cycle of life and death, jumped out of the river of fate, and was immortal. However, under the suppression of a powerful force, there was no such thing as immortality. Hence, there was the Emperor Star Secret Realm. In the core of the Emperor Star Secret Realm was the immortal Emperor Tomb. The Emperor Star Secret Realm was condensed by an immortal Emperor expert before he died. To be more precise, it was the true appearance of the immortal Emperor's mind. The immortal Emperor Tomb was the immortal emperor's soul palace. His soul was annihilated within, and after countless years, it awakened as the spirit of all living things, becoming the controller of the Emperor Star's secret realm. However, it was impossible to completely control the Emperor Star's secret realm. After all, even if it was the spirit of all living things, it was still a spirit of the immortal emperor level. For a newly awakened spirit of all living things, unless it reached the immortal emperor level, it could only control a portion of its power and come and go as it pleased. In fact, the entire Emperor Star secret realm, including the immortal emperor tomb, was a cultivation space that the immortal emperor had set up for the spirits of all living things. According to our speed, including the time spent in seclusion, the majority of cultivators have only entered the immortal emperor tomb for about 100 years. The depth we've reached is not something that the majority of cultivators can reach. Only a portion of the experts. As for the top experts, they must have gone much deeper than us. Of course, that's if they didn't go into seclusion. The old god's voice sounded in Chun Hao's mind. Don't talk so much nonsense. How do you feel now? Master, I feel a little stronger, but I'm not too sure. The pressure in the immortal emperor tomb is too strong. It's a little difficult to lock onto it, unless we're within a certain range. Right now, we're still very far away. The old god said awkwardly, Old god, I'll give you one more chance. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Speak. Cough, cough. Master, are you sure you want to take revenge now? I feel that it's still too early. After all, it's only been 100 years. Although you and one Ishue's strength has increased a lot, how can they not have? F***CK. Chun Hao cursed. 100 years ago, I could run if I couldn't beat them. Now, I can't run if I can't beat them? How do pigs die? Idiots die. Are you a pig? Huh? Master, why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, I would have told you. I thought you wanted to fight them to the death. Fight your sister. Sorry, master, I don't have a sister. Direction, 47 degrees to the left. Distance, unknown. Should be very far. The old god said bluntly. When they had escaped from Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei, Chun Hao had asked the old god, who had successfully achieved nirvana, to leave a mark on Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. In the old god's words, even a true immortal king would not be able to detect the mark. Chapter 13:21. What should be very far away? Could it be that you can't deduce it? Chun Hao frowned. Yes, master. What I said before wasn't completely false. The pressure of the immortal emperor tomb seriously interferes with one's judgment. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to determine the direction. Furthermore, this should also be moving forward. Therefore, I don't recommend master to chase after them. That's a waste of time. You might not be able to catch up even after hundreds of years. Furthermore, after going deeper, you'll meet them one day. There's really no need to chase after them. Old God said, That's true. Why didn't you King say that earlier? Since that's the case, let's continue going deeper. Old God's words made Chun Hao temporarily give up on chasing after Xiao Mantian and his wife. In the blink of an eye, another 300 years had passed in the Emperor Star's secret realm. Walking and stopping, Chun Hao and one Ishue cultivated as they advanced. However, they didn't encounter a single cultivator. Similarly, they didn't obtain any spiritual items of heaven and earth. Evidently, they were still in the periphery of the immortal emperor tomb. From this, it could be seen how big the soul palace of an immortal emperor expert was. A tower? On this day, Chun Hao and one Ishue, who were advancing, saw a tall tower in the distance. The tower emitted a myriad of rays of light, like the tower of an immortal. It was magnificent, ethereal, and ethereal. However, it didn't release any profound aura. Otherwise, Chun Hao and one Ishue wouldn't have seen it first, but rather sensed it first. Emperor Heavenly Stairway. Different from Chun Hao, one Ishue actually said these words in shock when he saw the tower. At the same time, Old God's slightly surprised voice rang out in Chun Hao's mind. He said the same words as one Ishue. Emperor Heavenly Stairway. Chen Hao looked at Wan Yishui in surprise and asked in his mind at the same time. When Chen Hao, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and Ao Guan were discussing the general principles of the Grand Tao, this was the last obstacle on the path to becoming an immortal emperor with a total of 3,000 steps. Only by reaching the 2,999th step would one have a chance of obtaining the general principles of the Grand Tao. However, Chen Hao didn't know what this ladder looked like. When I was looking up information about the immortal realm in the Academy's information room, I once saw records about the path to the immortal emperor. The Emperor's celestial stairway is the final hurdle on the path to the immortal emperor, and it looks like this. However, this is definitely not the Emperor's celestial stairway. It should be a training ground created to imitate the Emperor's celestial stairway. Wan Yishui said, "It should be. Let's go and have a look." Chen Hao said. The conjecture in his mind was the same as Wan Yishui's. In the past 300 years, other than some progress in cultivation, they didn't obtain any spiritual items. Chen Hao felt that his mouth was so dull that birds were about to pop out of it. At this moment, seeing the tower that resembled the Emperor's celestial stairway, his heart was filled with anticipation. Senior Hao, do you think the Academy will think that we're dead? Perhaps. We've already been here for 2,000 years. The token activated automatically around 1,500 years ago, but it didn't receive any summoning aura. It has already become a useless item. If we want to leave, we can only rely on ourselves. However, we can conclude that the space-time laws here should be around 3,000 times stronger than outside. According to what young Master Xinxing said, we've hit the jackpot. This isn't some primal secret realm, but the Emperor Star secret realm. The area we're in now is the core area of the Emperor Star secret realm, the tomb of the immortal emperor. What's more terrifying is that this immortal emperor must have done a lot of research on the spirit realm helmet when he was alive. It can even block the aura of the space connecting to the immortal realm. Otherwise, we could tell the Academy. When Chen Hao and Wan Yishui retracted their auras and quietly approached the tower, the voices of cultivators entered their ears. Moreover, the voices sounded quite familiar. Wan Yishui lightly bit her lips. A trace of anger flashed across her beautiful face, which had been nourished by Chen Hao. The person who had spoken was the one who had ridiculed her when they entered, called Senior Hao. Moreover, he had used his strength to humiliate Wan Yishui's team. However, it doesn't matter. Isn't this a great opportunity for us? Brother Hao is right. As long as we don't compete with young Master Xinxing, Xiao family Xiao Man Tian, Feng Hanwei, young Master Saber, and Sword Ding Hao, nothing will happen. As for the soul of all living things, I believe that one of them will be able to handle it. If we borrow their light, we'll be able to leave sooner or later. That's right. Other than them, we're the strongest people here. With such unique conditions, it's definitely a great opportunity. It's like the Emperor Heavenly Stairway. Even the Academy can enjoy it, and our 4 teams can take turns to enjoy it. Ha ha ha. Ah, that's right. It's our turn tomorrow. Just thinking about it makes me excited. What a pity. If it could accommodate 100 people at the same time, we wouldn't have to take turns. That's enough. 4 teams taking turns is better than the previous 10 teams taking turns. Anyway, don't let anyone else join us. Right now, we're one team. If one comes, we'll chase one away. If not, we'll kill them. That's for sure. But we don't have to kill them all. There are many ways to die. Just like those 2 girls a month ago. Hooligan. Haha. If there's a handsome guy, we don't have any objections if you want to enjoy him. Of course, if you're interested in me, I'll definitely die for you. Ha ha. Tens of cultivators with powerful auras, both male and female, sat at the entrance of the Emperor Heavenly Stairway, chatting without restraint. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui, who had quietly arrived, quickly understood the situation from their conversation. This tower that was imitating the Emperor Heavenly Stairway was definitely a sacred place for cultivation. However, there was a limit to the number of people who could enter at the same time. Right now, these cultivators were divided into 4 teams, taking turns to enter. Fatty, I think. Let's forget it. Forget it? Why should we forget it? Everything in the Emperor's Star secret realm is ownerless. If they can use it, we can use it too. Everything will be decided by strength. There's a lot of them, and they've already joined together, Wan Ishue said. Although her strength had increased by several times, which of the cultivators present was weak? Especially the person called Senior Hao. Wan Ishue had a deep impression of him, and now it was obvious that all of them had improved at an astonishing rate. There were so many experts working together, and Fatty and she were only two people. How could they compete? They're just a motley crew, Fatty said disdainfully. After speaking, he took a step forward and released his aura. Wan Ishue bit her lips and could only follow. Who's there? Boo! Chi chi chi! Boom! 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 Almost in an instant, the cultivators sitting in front of the tower all shouted loudly. At the same time, they activated their energy and looked in the direction of the fluctuations. Chapter 13:23. Soon after, two figures stepped into the air and floated into their line of sight. The fatty's face was filled with a harmless smile. He was bare-chested and strolled in the air at a leisurely pace. If there were people from Earth present, they would definitely think that he was a much younger Mithriel Buddha. Wan Ishue, on the other hand, followed beside the fatty. His expression was solemn, which made him look out of place with the fatty. There was no other way. Wan Ishue could not be as relaxed as the fatty. She knew that in the next moment, there would be a difficult battle. When the person called Senior Brother Hao saw the appearance of the fatty and Wan Ishue, he let out a surprised but mocking cry. He then said, "Isn't this Wan Ishue? TSK, TSK. I remember that before entering the secret realm, you were still a woman. What a pity, what a pity. Don't tell me that you've benefited this fatty." Wan Ishue didn't think that the other party would tease him so blatantly when they met, but it just so happened to hit the nail on the head. Wan Ishue's face immediately turned red, but he didn't know how to refute. "Ha ha! I was wondering who it was. So it's the two from the Taoist Academy. I heard that this fatty is the chief disciple. He even defeated Yin Tian." "I don't think so. Brother Hao, do you know Wan Ishue? I feel that she's more feminine now." "Oh? Indeed." This girl was not the type to give people a breathtaking feeling. However, she's very pleasing to the eye. The more you look at her, the more attractive she is. Now, although her primordial Yin has been eaten by a pig, she has indeed become more attractive. Damn fatty, he's wasting such a beauty. Ah! The crowd roared with laughter. The cultivators who had gathered their strength also relaxed. It was only two people, so they did not put them in their eyes. Even if the fatty was the chief disciple of the Taoist Academy, he was not a threat to them. The 10 or so people present were all top experts from first-rate academies. Moreover, this was the Emperor's Star secret realm. The token had already become trash, and they would be trapped here for many years. Who cared about their identity? Who cared about being reserved? Otherwise, the person who was addressed as Senior Brother Hao wouldn't have spoken so shamelessly and directly without any consideration at all. "Ew, don't go too far," Wan Ishue finally said after a long time. "Go too far? I still want to ride you." "Huh?" The group of people immediately laughed and scrupulously, looking at Wan Ishue with eyes full of lust. Boom! A terrifying, cold, killing intent suddenly bloomed, instantly causing the surrounding temperature to drop to the freezing point. It swept towards the crowd, causing their laughter to abruptly stop. One by one, they looked at Fatty in shock. Unknowingly, the harmless smile on the fatty's face had disappeared and was replaced by a cold, killing intent. His eyes had turned blood red, as if he had no human emotions. "Trash, are you done?" The fatty's gaze locked onto the person called Senior Gua as he asked coldly. Seeing the fatty like this, Wan Ishue also took a deep breath, and his fighting spirit began to soar wildly. "You, ha ha ha, pig. Are you sure you're talking to me?" His improvement is astonishing. The cultivator called Senior Brother Hao was first intimidated by Chun Hao's murderous aura, but after recovering from his shock, he laughed heartily to cover up his loss of self-control. At the same time, After feeling the soaring battle intent on Wan Ishue's body, he was slightly surprised. But with just this, he is qualified to fight with me. Hao Sheng? That's right, it's just the slaughter intent. Although your realm is SOSO, compared to senior brother Hao's fighting strength, you're not even fit to carry his shoes. Come, if you want to fight, we'll fulfill your wish. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, 14 figures stepped out from the crowd, their auras erupting as they directly surrounded Chun Hao and Wan Ishue. Brothers, take it easy. Don't kill this girl, let us have some fun. What? Before the banter and lascivious laughter ended, everyone's eyes widened in shock, unable to believe what they had just seen. Wang. The moment before they spoke, Wan Ishue's thousands of fine black hair fluttered without wind, wantonly flying. After Chun Hao's guidance, the azure silk blue wave technique, which had been integrated with the 7 emotions and 6 desires, was directly raised to the limit by Wan Ishue. It was also at this time that Chun Hao moved. The cold, emotionless, simple, and direct sword light was inconceivably fast. Combined with the effects of Wan Ishue's azure silk blue wave technique, it had reached a flawless stage. Not a second too early, not a second too late, it had perfectly struck out in the instant when everyone was distracted by the azure silk blue wave technique. Furthermore, before everyone had yet to recover, it had retracted the sword. Puff, 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 puff. Arrows of blood spurted out from between everyone's eyebrows, and their eyes widened in shock, unable to believe that they had been hit. The onlookers who were prepared to watch a good show seemed to have their throats forcibly cut off, and their laughter abruptly stopped. Pung, 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 pung. Boom, boom, boom. Immediately after, the heads of the 14 people who spurted out arrows of blood exploded, and their bodies collapsed. One sword killed them all. The 14 people did not even have the chance to use the law of the divine ability, and were killed by the fatty's sword. Of the people present, other than Chun Hao himself, not to mention the others, even Wan Ishue was shocked. She simply did not think that there would be such a terrifying effect. It was not that her azure silk blue wave technique was terrifying, but the time she could interfere for these experts was absolutely only a matter of an instant. Moreover, once there was a strong attacking aura, there would definitely be a reaction. In her view, at most, it would give the fatty an opportunity to take the initiative. But Chun Hao actually killed them all in one move, and each and every one of them had a hole in between their eyebrows. Without a doubt, this meant that in the instant of the sparks, the fatty did not release one sword, but 14. How fast was he? Everyone's gaze towards the fatty quietly changed. The original ridicule disappeared and was replaced by seriousness. The geniuses of the great world of CND are scum like you? The fatty's gaze swept across the people present and said with disdain, "You come here and die." Finally, Chun Hao raised his sword and pointed at the person called Senior Brother Hao. Arrogant. Looks like you're an outsider. Do you think you can speak like that about the people of the great world of CND? You're simply courting death. Brothers and sisters, we're about to change shifts, and there's not much time. Let's kill this arrogant person who dares to call us scum. Hao Dian felt a chill in his heart. Among all the divine abilities in the world, only speed could not be defeated. Although the fatty's aura was not strong, and the 14 people were obviously affected by the aura released by Wan Ishue, the fatty sword was too fast, so fast that even he did not see clearly how the fatty attacked. He was not sure if he could withstand Chun Hao's sword. How could he take the risk? Chapter 1324. Ha ha. Hao Jian, we're not your people. In fact, we're just here to watch a show. Brother, if I remember correctly, you're called Li Yuan, right? I was just joking just now. I'm Zhang Xiao from Dark North Academy. Give me some face and let bygones be bygones. We'll allow you and your partner to obtain the right to step onto the Emperor Celestial Stairway. As for your grudge with Hao Dian, it has nothing to do with us. How about it? Zhang Xiao said. Obviously, Chun Hao and Wan Ishue's strength made him make his choice without any hesitation. 14 people in one strike. Even as the valedictorian of Dark North Academy, he couldn't do that. However, even though he gave in, his tone was still very arrogant. How Diane's expression became very ugly. He didn't expect that the person who called him brother just now would draw a clear line between them at this moment. His idea of encouraging everyone to kill the fatty was completely ruined. We knew each other before. At this moment, the fatty narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhang Xiao, the leader of Dark North Academy. You didn't know each other before, but don't you know each other now? Zhang Xiao was stunned for a moment, then looked straight at Chun Hao and smiled. We didn't know each other before, so why should I give you face? Who do you think you are? The Emperor's celestial stairway is for the capable. Why do you have to allow the two of us to obtain it? The fatty said aggressively. Chun Hao wouldn't be merciful to this kind of scum who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Turning weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk must be built on the bottom line. How could those who cross the bottom line be written off just because of a little charity and a condescending concession? Chun Hao was sure that if he and Wan Yishui couldn't win, Wan Yishui would really become their plaything. This kind of person should be killed without mercy. The smile on Zhang Zhao's face gradually froze with a fatty's voice. It turned into a vicious expression, and a vicious aura suddenly appeared. Humph, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Do you really think you can do whatever you want in front of me with that little strength of yours? I just saw that your strength was all right and didn't want to fight with you. Since you don't know what's good for you and want to die, then I'll send you to heaven today. I'll give you a chance to finish him off first. Chi. Before Chun Hao could finish his words, Zhang Zhao's figure suddenly disappeared. In an instant, no one present could sense a trace of Chun Hao's aura. Puff. But in the next moment, something that made everyone's scalp go numb happened. How Diane's eyes widened. He flipped his head up and looked at the tip of the sword that was sticking out from the back of his head. He wanted to say a word, but he couldn't. This was because a boundless feeling of fear surged out from the sword and destroyed his will in an unstoppable manner. His consciousness collapsed. It was only at this moment that he understood why the 14 of them didn't even show the slightest bit of resistance. Regret. Endless regret. He had thought that the other party was a pig head, but who would have thought that the real pig head was him? He had actually taken the initiative to provoke such a terrifying existence. Not to mention him, even young Master God Walk, Feng Wuxing, who had been protecting him from the start, would find it difficult to take down this fatty. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Everything was too late. Bang! Rumble. It's a very simple matter. When Hao Diane's head exploded like a watermelon and his physical body was also detonated and destroyed, Chun Hao's figure silently returned to his original spot as if he had never moved. He said indifferently. Zhang Zhao's face couldn't help but twitch. The shock brought by the fatty's killing of Hao Dian with a single sword was far more terrifying than killing the 14 people before. After all, Chun Hao had won with speed. The 14 people were limited by their own strength and couldn't react at all. But Hao Dian was different. Zhang Xiao was very clear about Hao Dian's strength. Even if he wasn't as strong as him, he wasn't much weaker. But he was still killed by the fatty without any room for resistance. That terrifying speed, that elusive appearance, and that concealment that couldn't even be sensed was comparable to young Master God Walk, Feng Wuxing. How could such a monstrous existence appear in Hua Hua Academy? Wan Yishui looked at Hao Dian, who had humiliated her many times without the ability to seek justice, and was actually killed by the fatty with a single sword strike. Her mood was very good. At the same time, she had a clearer understanding of the fatty's abnormal and powerful strength. This made her feel proud from the bottom of her heart, because this was her, Wan Yishui's man. Although she was only one of his many women, she felt a little regretful. Come at me together, so as not to waste my time. The fatty's cold voice rang out, causing everyone's hearts to thump. Brotherly, this has nothing to do with me. Just now, I didn't have any words or thoughts to humiliate you. A female disciple saw Zhang Zhao's expression and couldn't help but take half a step back. She made a prompt decision. Then you can scram. Chun Hao glanced at him, and said with disdain, "You want to try walking away? Let me tell you, no matter where you go, it's a dead end. I, Zhang Xiao, hate this kind of coward the most." "Sorry, Chi." After a slight hesitation, the woman directly left, causing Zhang Xiao's expression to become extremely ugly. But the fatty had already locked on to his aura, so he didn't dare to act rashly. "Brotherly, me too." When the other woman saw this, she clenched her teeth and said, "Scram." Chen Hao was also disdainful, but he still let them go. All of this was within Chen Hao's expectations. A motley crew, vulnerable to a single blow. If they really swarmed up and fought with their lives, Chen Hao would be in trouble, not to mention Wan Yishui. But obviously, this temporary team was still divided into 4 factions, and there was no loyalty or unity to speak of. "Brotherly, I don't have any ideas either." "Is that so? Are you sure?" The woman who spoke looked at Chen Hao's fierce eyes and didn't dare to say anything more. Obviously, they couldn't get away with deceit. All of their previous movements were in the fatty's mind. With their cultivation, it was easy for them to do this. "Did you see that? He won't let anyone go. If you don't want to die, go." Zhang Xiao knew that he couldn't wait any longer, so he suddenly shouted. At this time, he also threw away his pride, and his previous superior attitude completely disappeared. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a violent aura gushed out from all the people present. However, what made Chen Hao, who was prepared for a big battle, a little stunned was that not a single one of them attacked him and Wan Yishui. Instead, they scattered in all directions like birds and beasts, madly running away. "Want to run? Chi." Although Chen Hao didn't expect this group of so-called geniuses to be so weak, he didn't waste any time. He swung his fat buttocks and merged with his sword to kill Zhang Xiao. Chapter 1325. Bam! Rumble. To Chen Hao's surprise, Zhang Xiao actually detonated his physical body just as the sword light was about to kill him. Under Zhang Xiao's deliberate control, the majestic and terrifying energy blasted toward Chen Hao. Even Chen Hao was sent flying by the recoil and spat out a mouthful of blood. This was the result of his quickest reaction. If he had been a little slower, the explosion of a freak Grand Luo's physical body would have been unbearable even for the experts of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. "Just you wait, Li Yuan. Zhang Xiao, will have my revenge." Hiss. With only his primordial spirit left, Zhang Xiao's flying ability increased several times. With that, he disappeared from Chen Hao's senses. F*CK. That's ruthless. Chen Hao was shocked. It was the first time he had seen such a decisive person. "But you think you can escape from Lord Fatty's hands like that?" "Fatty, wait for me." Buzz. Fatty's brow suddenly shook, and he broke through the air in an instant. However, Wan Yishui was dumbfounded. His primordial spirit had left his body. The fatty's primordial spirit actually left his body to chase after Zhang Xiao's primordial spirit. This was too crazy and too ruthless. After all, this was the immortal Emperor tomb, where danger lurked everywhere. Was it worth it to leave his primordial spirit just to chase after a fleeing primordial spirit? What? Zhang Xiao sensed an aura that was faster than his primordial spirit and was rapidly approaching. He was so frightened that he almost fell from the sky. Lord Fatty isn't the kind of person who kills ruthlessly. Unfortunately, Lord Fatty hates threats the most. A stray dog. So be it if you want to escape, but how dare you speak so arrogantly? Buzz. Chen Hao opened his hand, and a vast and mysterious palm print blasted out. In an instant, it turned into a giant hand that covered the sky, flashing with endless mysterious runes as it clenched down. "Li Yuan, if you kill me, there will be no place for you in this world. My Zhang family will tear you to pieces." Boom! Zhang Xiao was terrified and frantically resisted. "Oh, is the Zhang family very powerful? The #1 family in Dark North Star? Li Yuan, if you let me go, then today's matter will be written off. Otherwise, you will regret it." the #1 clan of the North Underworld Star. How does it compare to the Galaxy King's Shao clan? Lord Fatty is someone who is going to kill Shao Mantion. Do you think I will be afraid of you? Also, did you forget Lord Fatty's reminder? Lord Fatty hates threats the most. How dare you? A terrifying, soul-crushing power surged from all directions, making Zhang Shao realize that he had not only encountered a monstrous genius who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger, but also a madman, a complete madman. With his consciousness destroyed, Zhang Shao was dead. Phew! As his nascent divinity returned to his body, Chen Hao breathed out a long sigh of relief. He did not continue to chase after those scattered bandits. Not a small harvest. 2 leaders, 14 experts. Quite a lot of things. I should have robbed quite a few people. Even if it was killed by a single sword strike, the powerful spiritual items of heaven and earth would not be completely annihilated when it was destroyed. Naturally, Chen Hao put them away. Fatty, aren't you taking too much of a risk? What if someone comes back to attack your physical body, or the people inside come out, and I can't protect them? Haha, I couldn't ask for more. Unfortunately, they didn't come back. Fatty smiled and shook his head. Attack his physical body? Chen Hao was certain that after his nascent divinity left his physical body would be even more powerful than when he was in it. This was because the one watching over Chen Hao's physical body was the old god, who had become extremely powerful after his nirvana true self. Come, let's go in and take a look. Chen Hao did not say much, and pulled one Ishui toward the entrance of the tower. After entering the door on the first floor, there was a towering black pagoda with golden words engraved on it. Dao laws surged around it. Even these simple engravings were filled with powerful Dao runes. Moreover, they should have been left behind by an immortal emperor when he was alive. Azure Cloud Staircase. The 3 large words at the top were obviously the name of this tower, which was similar to the Emperor's Celestial Staircase. Azure Cloud Staircase meant to ascend to the clouds. Although it was not as domineering as the Emperor's Celestial Staircase, one could imagine how powerful the Azure Cloud Staircase was just based on its name. The small words below introduced the Azure Cloud Staircase in detail. It was indeed formed based on the Emperor's Celestial Staircase. There were a total of 3,000 steps, and the profundity of each step was based on the immortal Emperor's understanding of the Emperor's Celestial Staircase. Hence, the Azure Cloud Staircase, also known as the Lesser Celestial Staircase, could accommodate a maximum of 15 cultivators at the same time. If you can comprehend the first step within 10,000 years, you'll be qualified to go deeper. Otherwise, you'll lose the right to cultivate on the Azure Cloud Staircase. No wonder each team has 15 people. It looks like none of them have comprehended the first step until now. 10,000 years? The way I see it, to be able to comprehend the first level in 10,000 years, he should be a monster among geniuses. How long have we been in the secret realm? These people have only been here for a few hundred years at most. Of course, it's impossible for them to comprehend it. That's true. However, there's no protection in such a powerful place. It's obvious that the immortal emperor didn't intend to give us time to comprehend. 10,000 years for the first step, and 3,000 steps. If the time limit for each step is 10,000 years, then it'll be exactly 30 million years. Doesn't that mean 10,000 years in the great world of CND? That's right. However, can we get out in 10,000 years? The tokens are useless now. If we want to get out, we can only break the barrier of the mystic realm by ourselves. However, that's impossible for us. Yes, it's impossible for now. However, we don't have to rush. The spirits of all living things will eventually find us, right? Let's go in. They still have people in there. Strength is everything. Either get lost or die. It's as simple as that. Chen Hao said arrogantly. The 3 teams were all trash. How could one of them be a good person? Moreover, after experiencing so much, Chen Hao was clear that the great world of CND was a world where strength was everything. There was no right or wrong. If you were weak, you deserved to be bullied. Morality, benevolence, and righteousness became insignificant in the face of benefits. Of course, this was between strangers. True brothers and friends were definitely different. Boom! Chun Hao suddenly struck out with both his palms. One yin and one yang, two types of energy, blasted at the entrance of the first step. F*CK. Who the F*CK didn't keep their promises? There's still a day left. What's going on? F*CK, what's going on? I'm at a critical juncture. The moment the entrance of the inner door rumbled and opened, the extremely mysterious Tao mark pressure in the first step suddenly disappeared. At the same time, angry curses were heard. They jumped up and wanted to seek justice. After all, there was still a day left before the agreed time. Moreover, they should have taken the initiative to go out and not be interrupted. Chapter 1326. Aren't they from the Hua Academy? Are you looking for death? But when the 15 of them saw that there were only two people, a fatty and a beauty, they were slightly surprised. They instantly recognized the two as the Hua Academy's Li Yuan and Wan Yishui. In reality, before entering the primitive secret realm, as long as one paid attention, they would be able to remember the names of the 10,000 people who entered. Chun Hao and Wan Yishui, as disciples of the 5 great academies, were naturally more eye-catching. I'll give you 2 choices. 1 scram, 2 die. The fatty's smile did not change at all. Even his gaze did not waver as he said indifferently, "What did you say?" "Ha! Ha ha! Who do you think you are? Sword and Saber Prince Ding Hao. Are you the Shao family's Shao Mantian couple or the divine travel Prince Feng Wuxing?" "Ha ha! This damn fatty must have water in his head, trying to act cool in front of us. I'll count to 3. If you don't scram, that means you've chosen death." The fatty's voice was still indifferent. However, Wan Yishui's palms were sweating, and her nervous, tender body faintly trembled. She had never done such a thing before, but at this very moment, she was faintly excited in the depths of her heart. She didn't feel that the fatty had gone overboard in the slightest. Just like what the fatty had said, this was a world where the strong were respected. Furthermore, the person they were bullying was not a good person. Even at death's door, he was still so arrogant. 1, 3, idiot, die with me. The leader of the 15 people, the strongest cultivator, felt extremely ashamed and resentful. An unknown fatty actually dared to threaten him? If he did not kill him in one move, his reputation would be tarnished. What kind of joke is this? Even a random cat or dog wants to ride on my head and shit. Hence, he counted to 3 for the fatty and punched out at the same time. Huh. Everyone burst out laughing. They still did not have the slightest bit of awareness before death. How can a human be so stupid? Amidst the explosion, the fatty's indifferent voice clearly traveled into everyone's ears. Don't tell me you didn't think. How can I open the door? Killing trash like you is really dirtying Lord Fatty's hands. Open up your mind space and hand over everything. I'll spare your lives. The raging energy and dust dissipated. Fatty and Wan Yishui were still standing side by side, as if they hadn't moved at all. However, their leader had already disappeared, leaving behind only the bloodstains on the ground. One by one, they retreated in horror, chills running down their spines. The powerful leader didn't even have the chance to scream before he died. Moreover, Fatty's words finally made them think. With the 3 teams outside, how could Fatty and his companion come in and open the door? It was clear that the 3 teams outside were unable to stop them at all. In other words, they were already doomed. I'll count to 3. 1. It was still the same indifferent voice. Hiss, 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 hiss. I'll give it to you, don't kill me. We will give it to you. Chi, chi, chi. Walla, 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 walla. In an instant, all 14 of them opened up their mind spaces without exception, allowing Chun Hao's mind to merge into them and see everything clearly. At the same time, they forcefully endured the pain in their hearts and handed over all the treasures they had accumulated throughout their lives, such as spiritual items of heaven and earth, immortal fundamental crystals, and so on. No matter how many treasures there were, they had to be alive to enjoy them. Who dared to disobey? Good boys. You can scram now. Fatty's arrogant and cold expression finally revealed a harmless smile, and he waved his hand to chase them away. The 14 people were as if they had been released from a great burden. How would they dare to stay? In an instant, they disappeared completely. So many treasures. Wan Ishue looked at the mountain of treasures, immortal yuan crystals, and other items in the huge space on the first floor, and her eyes lit up a little. Any one of them would be richer than her savings. Take whatever you want, Fatty said generously. Fatty had always been generous to his own woman. What's yours is mine. Even you are mine. How can I not be generous? As he spoke, Fatty waved his hand and sent out 2 waves of energy, closing the inner door of the entrance. Phew, that was close. Who would have thought that Fatty Li Yuan from the Tai Hua school would have such terrifying strength? Luckily, he didn't want to kill them all. That's right, this Fatty is really a madman. He even dared to kill Zhang Xiao. And from his tone, he even dared to touch Xiao Mantian from the Xiao family? It should be, before entering the Emperor's Star secret realm. Did you forget that Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei said that the 2 of them were burdens? With his Fatty strength, how could he be happy? I feel that even if this Fatty isn't as strong as Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei, he isn't any weaker than them. Furthermore, his speed and concealment skills are comparable to young Master Godspeed's Feng Wuxing. Zhang Xiao didn't even have the strength to fight back. He is indeed very strong. Let's wait and see. There will definitely be people who will spread the news today. As long as young Master Godspeed and Xiao Mantian receive the news, they will definitely come. There is a high possibility that other peak experts will also come. That's right. The Azure Cloud Staircase is a small staircase. It has 3,000 steps and 3,000 paths. It is very likely to be one of the strongest cultivation grounds in the secret realm. It will be of great help to those who are on the path to becoming immortal emperor. It's a pity that we can't go there anymore. In the first wave of people who escaped, for people from one of the academies gathered together and discussed with lingering fear. As for the 14 people who were robbed and chased off the Azure Cloud Staircase by the Fatty, they were extremely depressed. They hated the Fatty to the bone, but there was nothing they could do. Their leader, the top student of the Thunderclap Academy, Yin Jiuli, had been killed by the Fatty in one move. What could they do? Furthermore, after stepping off the Azure Cloud Staircase, the other 3 teams had disappeared. It was obvious that they had also been chased away by the Fatty. This wasn't an existence that they could contend against. However, it was impossible for him to just swallow his anger. The Azure Cloud Staircase is definitely the most important cultivation ground in this secret realm. Reaching the top of the 3,000 steps is the time to shatter the void and return to the great world of CND. Dehua Academy's Li Yuan and Wan Ishue monopolized it. They said that they would kill anyone who came, no matter who it was, including Xiao Mantian and his wife, Feng Wuxing, Ding Hao, and other peak experts. They looked down on everyone and were incomparably arrogant. In the future, if we see any stronger cultivators, we will spread this news. The news, which was hard to tell whether it was true or false, was spread out from the mouths of these cultivators. Even the originator of the Azure Cloud Staircase who made up the story didn't expect that his story about reaching the top of the 3,000 steps was the time to shatter the void and return to the Celestial Emperor realm was actually true. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On the first level of the Azure Cloud Staircase, after Chun Hao closed the Tai Chi door, the entire space once again released an extremely mysterious Tao mark pressure. What surprised Chun Hao and Wan Ishue was that the Tao mark pressure wasn't strong. To be exact, it was only slightly stronger than the pressure outside. The only difference was that this Tao mark pressure contained a type of Tao law. It was a pure, simple, but extremely mysterious Tao law. Wan Ishue felt that she didn't know where to start. It was just like when she comprehended the Tao mark left by Xiao Mantian. She had no clue at all. However, this was also within her expectations. To be able to comprehend the mystery of the first level in 10,000 years one would be qualified to enter the second level. To be able to do this, one must be a genius among geniuses. Furthermore, she had just entered the secret realm. It would be strange if she could grasp the mystery within. Chapter 13:27. Chunhao had only sensed it for a while, but he was slightly surprised before he even started to comprehend it. The mystery contained in the pure Dalmark pressure made him feel a sense of déjà vu, as if he had seen it somewhere before. No, it's not that I've seen it before. It's that the general outline of the Great Tao contains such mystery. Chunhao instantly thought of the crux of the problem. The Azure Cloud Ladder was condensed with reference to the Emperor Celestial Ladder. Although there were thousands of people and thousands of Taos, the essence of each Great Tao was the same. In other words, the origin of the mysterious aura contained in the first level would definitely be reflected in the general outline of the Great Tao. However, this realm is far beyond the realm I've comprehended. It's not easy to break through the first level. Chunhao thought to himself, and then looked at Wan Yishui. Sister Shui, let's comprehend it together. Although there's no powerful pressure here to train ourselves, the mystery contained in the Dalmark pressure is the real aura of the Great Tao. Later, I'll recite the general outline of the Great Tao with Tao sound. Perhaps it'll help us comprehend it. Wan Yishui nodded in response. After all these years of being together in dual cultivation, Wan Yishui was no stranger to Chunhao's general outline of the Great Tao. The two of them sat cross-legged facing each other, connected their minds, and entered the state of thoughtless tranquility. Wan Yishui's azure, silk blue ripple technique became the medium to connect their auras. Although their bodies did not merge, their soul consciousness easily entered the highest realm of unity. Immediately, Chunhao's lips opened and closed. Tao's sound filled the air, and golden lotus flowers floated out. His aura became elegant and sacred at this moment, as if an immortal had descended. Along with the passage of time, the Tao voice of the lotus blossoming tongue gradually underwent a subtle change. The lotus flowers transformed into numerous golden characters, and every single character was a character that Chunhao had chanted with the Tao voice. However, at this moment, they seemed to have come alive and given birth to life. They swayed gently on their own and transformed into numerous extremely profound talisman markings. Boom, boom, boom. It was also at this time that Chunhao and Wan Yishui's minds, which were connected as one, began to rumble. It was as if they were experiencing the primordial scene of the birth of the world and the beginning of the primordial chaos. The most ancient and simplest rune mysteries that only contained the most singular aura began to cleanse the depths of their souls. Chunhao felt enlightened. The complex and mysterious aura of the Tao marks seemed to be dissected by these simple and pure symbols. In Chunhao's mind, it became simple and clear. He seemed to have comprehended something, pondered over it, and gradually understood. Unfortunately, although Wan Yishui's mind was connected with Chunhao's and had reached the highest level of unity, he was still restrained by his own realm and comprehension ability. He could only float up and down with Chunhao's state of mind in a trance, seemingly comprehending but not comprehending, and could only leave a little impression and trace. However, even so, Wan Yishui felt as if a heavenly gate had been opened. His understanding of the origin of the Tao was growing at an unprecedented speed. It was much stronger than the first time he comprehended the origin of the Tao under the Tao sound of a true immortal king. The origin of the Tao. The wisp of consciousness in Chunhao's mind was always in a clear-headed state. This kind of consciousness that was completely isolated, as if monitoring his own cultivation situation, to Chunhao, who was immersed in cultivation, would more or less have a little impact. However, Chunhao had to do this. After all, this Azure Cloud staircase did not have any protective restrictions. Moreover, Chunhao did not even need to think to know that the Azure Cloud staircase was a sacred place that was hard to come by even in the immortal Emperor tomb. It was a sacred place that all cultivators would fight for. Moreover, there were many people who had escaped. These people, when they were qualified to enjoy it, were naturally afraid that others would know. They would never spread any news. Moreover, those who discovered this place would not be able to leave even if they wanted to. However, it was different now, because they had lost the qualification to enter. Given the nature of these people, Chun Hao did not believe that they would silently accept his forceful occupation. It was inevitable that they would spread the news and even exaggerate the awesomeness of the azure cloud staircase. You robbed me. How can I let you off easily? This was the common characteristic of almost everyone. Because of this, Chun Hao had to keep a wisp of independent and clear-headed consciousness, just in case. As I said, the 3,000 steps of the Emperor Heaven's staircase should only convey the aura of the origin of the Tao, which is the overall aura of the general outline of the great Tao. That's right. If each step really represents the mystery of a great Tao, then I'm afraid no one in the world can reach the top. However, even if it's just the aura of the origin of the Tao, no one has reached the top. The highest is the 2,999th step. Reaching the top meant passing the path of the immortal emperor. That was the moment to be promoted to the immortal emperor. However, now, the strongest star river king in the great world of CND was at most a half-step immortal emperor. There's one more thing. The origin of the Tao of the azure cloud staircase should be the immortal emperor's own origin of the Tao. In other words, the azure cloud staircase was condensed for his reincarnation of the forest of all things. For others, it can only serve as inspiration. If they sink too deep into it, it will become a restraint on the path of the immortal emperor. Fuchi, thinking of this, a sword light of wisdom suddenly rose in Chun Hao's mind. It directly cut off most of his mind that was immersed in enlightenment and cut off the mental connection with Wan Yishui. Fatty, what's wrong? Suddenly cut off, Wan Yishui screamed and looked at Chun Hao in confusion. At the same time, her fighting spirit rose and she was ready to fight. Her first thought was that the fatty, with his strong perception, might have discovered something. It doesn't belong to us. We don't need it. Chun Hao shook his head slightly. What do you mean? The mysterious aura here is the origin of the Tao of the immortal emperor condensed here. If we immerse ourselves in enlightenment, we will indeed make amazing progress in a short period of time. It can even be said that before the true immortal king realm, there are many benefits. However, the more benefits we get, the greater the restraint on us in the end. This is the Tao of the immortal emperor, not our Tao. We can't sink too deep. Fatty, isn't that already very good? True immortal king, my greatest wish is, if you follow me, your goal can't be limited to the true immortal king realm. I must step into the immortal emperor realm, jump out of life and death, see through fate, achieve eternal life, and roam the endless Milky Way. You're just a little true immortal king? Let's go. The fatty smiled and despised Wan Yishui's short-sightedness. He directly pulled Wan Yishui and stepped out of the azure cloud staircase. Chapter 1328. Plans could not keep up with the changes. Chun Hao had forcefully occupied the azure cloud staircase, but had given it up not long after entering. Not to mention others. Even Chun Hao himself did not expect this. Wan Yishui felt that it was a pity, but Chun Hao did not care at all. However, it was also because of Chun Hao's carelessness that he missed the opportunity to break through the void and return to the great world of CND. Otherwise, with the foundation of the primary principle of the great Tao, he would definitely be able to break through layer by layer easily. Why would he need 10,000 years to break through each layer? There wouldn't be much suspense if they were unstoppable. Of course, this was a blessing in disguise. Azure Cloud Staircase, minor staircase, condensed from the Emperor's celestial staircase. It can break through the void and return to the great world of CND. In a few hundred years, the news of the Azure Cloud Staircase had spread among the cultivators who had stepped into the immortal Emperor tomb. What? Li Yuan from University of Dahua, killed Hao Jian and the others? He killed 14 people with one sword, and then killed Hao Jian with another sword? In the depths of the immortal emperor tomb, young Master Xinxing, Feng Wuxing, had come out from a cultivation treasure ground and met a few cultivators with decent strength. He had received the news that Hao Jian and the others had been killed. Hao Jian was the valedictorian of the Cloud Sea Academy, and young Master Xinxing, Feng Wuxing, was the external aid that the Cloud Sea Academy had invited. Before entering the Emperor Star's secret realm, the person who had stood out to challenge Xiao Mantian and his wife because of Hao Jian was Feng Wuxing. That fatty's aura seems to be ordinary, but he could actually kill Hao Jian with one sword. It seems that I have misjudged him. Feng Wuxing thought back to the scene when he had seen the fatty. Besides knowing this person, to be exact, the fatty did not attract his attention at all. If Hao Jian had not ridiculed Wan Yishui, and if he had not stood up for Xiao Mantian, he might not have even looked at the fatty. Minor staircase. The profoundness it contains allows them to improve rapidly. It should be true. Only a true immortal emperor can condense such a sacred cultivation ground. I must go take a look. Chi. Young Master Xinxing, Feng Wuxing, not long after he received the news, he decisively moved, giving up on the huge temptation of continuing to approach the core area. It wasn't that he was tempted by the news. Instead, he saw the great potential of the 3,000 steps of the Lesser Sky Stairway. Only immortal emperors who had reached the top of the Emperor Heavenly Stairway could create such a place. Even if there were no magical treasures, just comprehending it would be of great help to one's future ascension of the Emperor Heavenly Stairway. Maybe it would be the key factor in reaching the top of the Emperor Heavenly Stairway. One had to know that this experience was something that even the strongest expert in the great world of CND, Star River King, couldn't give. In the vast and boundless immortal Emperor tomb, it would take some time even if they started to approach the Azure Cloud Staircase as soon as they got the news. Even Feng Wuxing, who was known as the Godwalk Young Master, was no exception. However, there were fewer and fewer cultivators who were able to go deeper. In other words, there were no more cultivators who could quickly go deeper. They could only continue to cultivate and temper their bodies to increase their endurance and continue to advance. Because of Feng Wuxing's extreme speed, he went deeper than other experts. Therefore, he was the first to discover the sacred cultivation ground and occupy it. Xiao Mantian and his wife, the young master of saber and sword, Ding Hao, as well as the disciples of the new Sword King, Qing Yang and Miao Xian, who were known to the outside world, but only a few people had met in the Emperor Star's secret realm. When they arrived at Feng Wuxing's location and knew that it was occupied by experts, they didn't fight for it for the time being. Everyone knew that there were even more powerful sacred cultivation grounds in the deeper regions. Because of this, Xiao Mantian, Ding Hao, Miao Xian, and Qin Yang, as well as a small number of hidden experts, went deeper than Feng Wuxing. Therefore, these experts were late for over 10,000 years before they heard the news from the mouths of other cultivators. It had to be said that the immortal Emperor tomb was really too big. It was so big that it took over 10,000 years for news to spread, especially when it was deliberately spread by people. As for Feng Wuxing, who had returned early, he felt great. Although there were new cultivators occupying the Azure Cloud stairs by the time he arrived, he naturally took it by force the moment he appeared. No one dared to say a word against him, and no one dared to compete for it for 10,000 years. In fact, when he had stepped on the Azure Cloud stairs for 1,000 years, he didn't even know if there were people after him, because he had already entered the second layer. 10,000 years to pass, but young Master God Travel only used 1,000 years. Such a terrifying comprehension ability. Even Chun Hao would be shocked if he knew. However, Feng Wuxing didn't relax in the slightest. Moreover, he didn't stop for even a moment. He madly and wholeheartedly comprehended because he believed that Fatty Li Yuan and Wan Yishui had definitely entered the second layer before him. No matter what, he didn't believe that the two of them would leave such a sacred cultivation ground. Unlike Chun Hao, Feng Wuxing definitely wouldn't discover that the azure cloud stairs contained the origin of Tao, and the origin of Tao of a former immortal emperor. Chun Hao was able to discover it because he possessed the Grand Tao outline, and it was the complete Grand Tao outline. The wind was formless, and it was an extremely powerful Tao law and profundity. As long as one comprehended it, one's state of mind, will, and comprehension of the heavenly Tao laws would improve at a tremendous speed. This feeling was absolutely indescribable. Moreover, Feng Wuxing believed that when he reached the top of the 3,000th layer, there would definitely be amazing inheritances, opportunities, or dangers brought by the spirits of all living beings. But no matter what, they were all things that he desperately wanted. What was there to fear about the spirits of all living beings? 10,000 years later, when the Shao couple received the news, they only pondered for a moment before choosing the azure cloud stairs, just like Feng Wuxing. Because of Fatty Li Yuan and Wan Yishui, and because they also saw the true value of the azure cloud stairs. Not to mention anything else. If they could reach the top, they only needed to tell the Shao clan's ancestor, the Star River King, about the mysteries they comprehended. Reaching the top, even the Star River King couldn't condense the 3,000th layer. How high was its value? But after receiving the news, Qin Yang and Miao Xian hesitated for a moment, but didn't change their path. One was a natural-born sword emperor, the other was a natural-born sword emperor. Once they decided on something, it wouldn't be easy to change it. Moreover, they were already invincible grand heavenly immortals and had absolute confidence in themselves. After entering the core of the immortal emperor tomb, finding the immortal emperor's coffin, and obtaining the immortal emperor's remains and relics, it wouldn't matter if they returned to take a look. 10,000 years for one layer. They had absolute confidence in catching up. It was the best of both worlds and not choosing one. Chapter 1329. Under the space-time laws of the Emperor's Star's secret realm, Chun Hao and Wan Yishui walked and stopped for 10,000 years, constantly going deeper and deeper, searching for their own opportunities and luck. The number of cultivators they met became fewer and fewer, and in the end, it was almost impossible to meet anymore. The increasingly terrifying pressure had already stopped the vast majority of cultivators from advancing. If it weren't for Chun Hao's strong endurance and the azure strand's blue ripple art, this supreme dual cultivation technique, not to mention Wan Yishui, even Chun Hao's own cultivation speed would be greatly reduced. After all, the highest realm of the fusion of spirit and flesh and the astonishing effects of the azure strand's blue ripple art would greatly increase Chun Hao's cultivation speed. In a dilapidated palace that was on the verge of collapse, the naked Chun Hao let out a soft sigh and opened his eyes. What entered his eyes was the naked and exquisite Wan Yishui. At this moment, they were entangled together in a strange position, still in negative contact. 1,000 years, each time is longer than the last. Chun Hao's lips curled into a smile as he muttered. His gaze carried a faint trace of gentleness and affection as it swept over the unconscious Wan Yishui. The most gentle and gentle water, a woman who was truly like water. Every time they dual cultivated, it would bring Chun Hao a new experience and feeling. Not only did it affect his soul and body, but more importantly, it affected his cultivation. This was a feeling that Chun Hao had never experienced before. To be more precise, Chun Hao had never experienced such a feeling during his cultivation. All along, the cultivation of cultivators was undoubtedly painful and lonely. It was accumulated through blood, sweat, and time. However, to cultivators it was worth it, because all the pain would disappear when they broke through the barrier and their cultivation level would rise. When the comfortable and powerful feeling came, no matter how much pain it would be worth it. But now, Chun Hao did not feel any pain. The process of cultivation caused Chun Hao to be intoxicated and happy. He wished he could immerse himself in cultivation at all times. This was definitely not because of the master between the soul and the body brought about by dual cultivation. Instead, it was because of the enlightenment and tempering process at the beginning of the great cycle, and the comfort brought about by true cultivation. A different experience, but I seem to like the feeling of cultivation more. Fatty muttered to himself. After 1,000 years of dual cultivation, the two of them once again broke through the limits of the pressure they could withstand and had a new understanding of it. However, at the end of the dual cultivation, Chun Hao, who had never had sex with one Ishui purely for the purpose of cultivation, decided to experience it on the spur of the moment. Wan Ishui, who had only been a woman once, was continuously engaged by Chun Hao for several hours before he stopped. At this moment, she directly fell into a mortal's deep sleep. However, Chun Hao was still as lively as ever. "Damn fatty, what do you mean?" Suddenly, Wan Ishui, who seemed to be in a deep sleep and indeed did not have any fluctuations in her mind, suddenly opened her eyes. She stared at Chun Hao and asked, "Aren't you asleep?" Chun Hao, who was in his original form, said in astonishment. He was slightly surprised. "If you say bad things about me, I'll wake up." Wan Ishui revealed a trace of pride. "Another breakthrough?" Chun Hao was slightly expectant. "Yes, the Tao is natural, the realm of kindness like water. Ordinary cultivators, I'm afraid that when I use the azure silk jade ripple technique and fall into an illusion, they would not even know that they have fallen into it." "Don't interrupt. What did you mean just now?" I didn't do well enough?" Cough, cough. "It's already very, very good. Brother just likes the feeling of being refreshed and improving. That's all." "Fish and bear paws," Chun Hao said. However, he was thinking about a question in his heart. Why did he have such a feeling? After all, the most primitive communication was the true catharsis of desire. It should be what a hot-blooded man like him liked the most. No matter how refreshing dual cultivation was, with some benefits added in, his heart should be second. However, he actually had a feeling that he liked cultivating more. What was this situation? Could it be that some kind of function was deteriorating? Fortunately, the figures of Chun Hao, Chun Shui, Helian Wuzi, and other women appeared in his mind. When he deliberately fantasized, he immediately had the urge to be a man. Only then did Chun Hao heave a sigh of relief. In the end, he could only conclude that Sister Shui, this natural dual cultivation partner, was really too valiant. She had surpassed the most primitive desire in Chun Hao's heart. Compared to cultivating, it's only been 2 hours. What a be delay. Do you not like me? F***CK. You can't say that. If I don't like you, would I roll in the sheets with you? What kind of joke is this? I'm not a casual person. Who would believe you? There's so many women already. Looks like I spoil you too much. Watch how I teach you a lesson." Chi. Chun Hao suddenly turned around and got on the horse again. No, damn fatty, I just came. Be gentler. This is my punishment for you speaking nonsense. Shameless. Suddenly, a cold and ethereal voice that seemed to come from beyond the 9 heavens floated directly into Chun Hao and Wan Ishui's ears. Chun Hao, who was about to start a new round of charging, quivered and almost jumped up. Not to mention the thin-skinned Wan Ishui. F***CK? Who is it? Chun Hao shuddered and instantly returned to the appearance of a fatty. He got up from Wan Ishui's body, and his eyes shone with an incomparably bright golden light as he looked up. At this moment, the dilapidated but still sturdy palace was useless under Chun Hao's special ability. A figure stood in the void, but with his back facing the palace was reflected in Chun Hao's eyes, causing Chun Hao to frown. Expert. Beauty. Super expert. At the same time, she was also a super beauty, just standing in the void. It was as if she had merged with heaven and earth. If Chun Hao's special ability had not seen through the walls of the palace and seen the other party, even Chun Hao would not have been able to sense the other party's aura. She was heaven and earth were her. Chun Hao, who had experienced this realm before, was naturally very familiar with it. However, Chun Hao had reached it when he was in a lower realm and could not be compared to the other party. In the first 1,500 years, Chun Hao and Wan Ishui had met this woman whose identity was unknown, but there had been no conflict. The other party had no intention of bullying them. In other words, the other party did not put the two of them in her eyes at all and completely ignored them. At that time, Chen Hao also clearly felt that this woman was not someone he could compete with. The sword intent that was inadvertently released could only be described as terrifying. Chapter 1330. This woman was the female disciple of the new generation Sword Chen Hao, Miao Xian. However, Chen Hao didn't know her identity. It's her, F***CK. After Chen Hao discovered that it was the beautiful expert he had seen before, he cursed in his heart. Even though he knew that the other party was extremely powerful and likely beyond his imagination, it still made Chen Hao have the impulse to beat her up. There was no other way. If it was anyone else doing this, they would have the impulse to kill if they were suddenly disturbed. It was very easy to leave a psychological shadow, especially for some brothers with poor psychological quality. If they didn't handle it well, they would become the legendary Brother Withered. Who wouldn't be angry? The only thing worth rejoicing about was that the other party had clearly sensed what Chen Hao and Wan Yixue were doing, but didn't break in. Otherwise, it would be really bad. Chen Hao's appearance was exposed. With the other party's knowledge, she would naturally know that Chen Hao had cultivated the Great Change technique to the ultimate level. This was one of the reasons. Secondly, Chen Hao and Wan Yixue were naked, doing primitive activities for the sake of human reproduction. How could they be seen by outsiders? What a scandal! Not to mention Wan Yixue, even Chen Hao felt that he had no place to put his face. Boom! Chen Hao blasted open the seal he had set up with a punch and stepped out of the dilapidated palace. However, before Chen Hao could speak, the beautiful expert Miao Xian, who had her back facing Chen Hao, didn't even look back. She took the initiative to speak with her back facing Chen Hao. I'll give you 3 minutes to leave here. Her voice was very light and faint, but revealed an unquestionable and irresistible will. It gave people the feeling that she was a high and mighty emperor, and her words were like gold and jade. No one could go against her. Boom! How could the god of slaughter, Chen Hao, who had been interrupted and was a little angry, endure such a blatant contempt? Miao Xian's words directly ignited Chen Hao. In that instant, a terrifying fighting intent soared to the heavens. Chen Hao's essence, true essence, soul force, and will of slaughter directly bloomed without restraint. Chen Hao didn't dare to hold back in the slightest when facing a mysterious woman who could bring him enormous pressure with just her aura alone. Whoosh! Chi! 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 Rumble! Ever since he stepped into the Emperor's Star's secret realm, other than the few times he was hunted down by Xiaoman Tian, this was the first time in 10,000 years that Chen Hao had used all his strength. He had only gathered his aura, and he had not even touched Miao Xian's aura yet, but he had caused a qi explosion. Miao Xian, who had her back facing Chen Hao and did not seem to care about Chen Hao at all, was slightly surprised. Immediately, an excited glint flashed across her eyes. That's right. This is definitely an invincible general trend formed by the belief of being invincible and having never tasted defeat. Master, it's not just an invincible general trend. Just as Chen Hao was thinking, Old God's voice appeared in Chen Hao's mind. What else? The body of a sword emperor in the sky, the Emperor of Swords. This is an innate emperor's aura that makes people submit. Old God reminded. The body of a sword emperor? There's such a body? Chen Hao was surprised. This was the first time he heard of such a body. Yes, there are all kinds of strange things in this world. There are sword emperors and sword emperors. They are born as one with the sword, and all swords bow down to them. Their body and mind are in harmony with the sword. Such a person's talent in swordsmanship is simply unimaginable to ordinary cultivators. The 9 levels of swordsmanship are easy. The birth of sword intent, sword soul, and so on is a matter of course. If the immortal Tao did not collapse, cough cough, such a person could become a sword emperor, which is the immortal emperor realm. I'm afraid there will be no barrier. Master, You have to be careful. This woman is definitely a supreme swordsmanship master, and she is in the category of invincible Daluo Jinxian. Although you are already at the peak of late stage, you still have not stepped into the peak stage. Old God was naturally confident in Chun Hao, even if the other party had the body of a sword emperor. However, it was not like in the ancient chaos Great Thousand World and the chaotic Great Thousand World. At that time, Chun Hao, who was only Daluo Jinxian, could kill Homing Supreme and even cutting Dao perfected immortal experts. However, it was different in the great world of CND. Chapter 1331. The great world of CND was a holy land where countless top geniuses gathered. Even an ordinary disciple from a third-rate academy could be considered a genius in ancient chaos. A disciple from a first-rate academy could definitely be called a genius among geniuses. Therefore, in the great world of CND, especially when Chun Hao was facing Xiao Mantian and his wife, it was almost impossible for him to challenge someone of a higher realm. And for a heaven-defying existence like Miao Xian, even if Chun Hao was at the same level, he would not have an easy time, let alone now when he was one level lower. No matter how confident old God was in Chun Hao, he could not help but worry at this moment. "Don't worry," Chun Hao said and directly cut off the mental communication with old God. He looked at Wan Yishui and said, "Sister Shui, you wait at the side. Fatty, don't worry. Do you think I'm afraid of a little girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth?" Chun Hao looked at Miao Xian provocatively and said. He deliberately looked very relaxed, but in fact, Chun Hao was really adjusting his mentality. The greater the pressure, the calmer he had to be. Of course, this was only an excuse on the surface. It was mainly for Miao Xian to hear. Secretly, Chun Hao said to Wan Yishui, "Even if you can't win, you can still escape. Don't worry, you just need to stay on my side." Oh, Wan Yishui naturally understood Chun Hao's intention. Staying on his side, it would be easier to escape when the time came. After all, the other party already knew of their existence. Chun Hao could not absorb Wan Yishui into his mind at this time. Daluo Jinxian could absorb living people. This secret could not be exposed unless it was absolutely necessary. "I hope your battle strength is as powerful as your mouth. There is still 1 minute," Miao Xian said indifferently. Chun Hao's deliberately mocking words did not even cause the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. This made Chun Hao feel more and more terrified of the other party. Perfect realm, transcendent state of mind. Such a person was no doubt a battle genius who could maintain the strongest battle strength at any time, and could even explode at any time. Why wait? Bang! A clear and melodious sword chime suddenly flashed out from between Chun Hao's eyebrows. Wong. The instant the sword appeared, it suddenly shook and emitted a rumbling sound. After that, the aura of the slaughter sword Dao shot into the sky. Isn't he just a sword genius? I, Lord Fatty, will fight you with my sword today, Fatty said coldly. Are you qualified? Since you're in a hurry to reincarnate, then make your move. 2 sharp sword lights suddenly flashed in Miao Xian's eyes. The corners of her mouth revealed a contemptuous smile as she said indifferently, "Sword." 1,000 years before entering the Emperor's Star Secret Realm, in the great world of CND, no one in the same cultivation level as her was qualified to make or use her sword. If not for her master's prediction of this opportunity, she would have already stepped into the Hongmeng domain. Chi. With a flash of sword light, Chun Hao drew his sword and attacked. As soon as an expert made a move, one would know whether or not he was an expert. Chun Hao, who was the first to attack, condensed a majestic and terrifying sword intent and energy on his sword. He drew it, but did not release it. He directly approached Miao Xian in the state of one with the sword. Without a doubt, this was a true sword duel. It was the most dangerous and exciting way to battle. It tested one's attainment in sword Dao. From the looks of it, Chun Hao was just casually holding the sword hilt, casually becoming one with the sword, and casually thrusting his sword. However, Miao Xian was unable to find a flaw in Chun Hao's fat body. Chun Hao's condensed sword, chi, and battle intent had condensed into a shapeless sword move. Miao Xian's long hair fluttered behind her as she stood before this formidable sword move, and her dress stuck to her body. She seemed as if she was standing before a violent gale, causing her graceful, exquisite, and curvaceous figure to be completely revealed. But, you're very confident. Your attainment in sword Dao has also exceeded my expectations. Unfortunately, you met me. Miao Xian's expression only changed for a moment before she said indifferently. At the same time, she lightly pointed at Chun Hao, who was one with the sword. Wang, Qi, rumble, rumble. How is this possible? So powerful. Is it really just Daluo Jingxian? Wan Yishui, who was sweating for Miao Xian in the distance, felt extremely horrified at this moment. His entire body felt unwell. Without a doubt, he became even more worried. A finger, a casual finger, but it directly sent Chun Hao, who was one with the sword, flying. What kind of finger was that? A terrifying killing intent was contained within it. Endless profound laws revolved within it. A terrifying power was contained within it. The moment it appeared, it seemed to have become the core of the world. Damn, she's actually so strong? Chun Hao, who was sent flying, was shocked. Although he was mentally prepared, he did not expect this woman to be so strong. This was truly beyond his expectations. I actually didn't hurt you? Miao Xian seemed to be slightly surprised as she looked at Miao Xian, who quickly stabilized his body while tumbling. His battle intent had become stronger, and his entire body was becoming fiercer and fiercer. This undoubtedly made Chun Hao very displeased, very displeased. Mother of asterisk her, you want to hurt Lord Fatty with just a finger? It seems that I still underestimated you. You're just Daluo Golden Wonderland. To be able to comprehend sword force and use it is already 1 in 100 million. And your physical body, willpower, and state of mind can also be ranked among the top in the same realm. It's a bit of a pity to kill you like this. You talk too much nonsense. Qi, feeling that he was severely humiliated, his confidence was severely damaged, and his invincible belief was once again thwarted. Chun Hao's battle-intense sword, and his rage overflowed. Boom! This sword, when it was unleashed, the mountains collapsed, and the earth trembled. The great 5 elements art condensed on the sword, and it blasted out. Very good. Buzz. Miao Xian saw that the power of Miao Xian's sword had suddenly increased by several times. Not only was she not worried, she even became a little excited as she spoke. As she spoke, her entire body trembled, and rays of bright light bloomed from her body. The light actually surrounded her entire body and condensed into the shadow of a treasured sword. Looking from afar, she seemed to have transformed into a treasured sword, or rather, her entire body was a sword with a monstrous aura and a sharp edge. Just like that, she faced Chun Hao and gently twirled her body. Like a dancing young girl, she swayed her slender waist. But a huge sword light suddenly appeared, carrying the might of heaven and earth like a heavenly sword breaking through the sky. Boom! Rumble! Damn, Miao Xian's fat buttocks swayed wildly, and he once again tumbled and flew out. Fatty! In the distance, Wan Yishui could not help but cry out. Fortunately, Miao Xian only tumbled a few times, and once again stabilized his body, as if he was still uninjured. To be able to release the great 5 elements art in an instant and condense it in the sword intent. Your comprehension is also first-rate. Good. Good, your sister. If you have the ability, then have a good fight with me. Only know how to defend. You think Miao Xian only has this little ability? Can't you see that I can't even hurt a single hair on Miao Xian's body? Chapter 1332. Fatty really didn't know what this unbelievably powerful woman was up to. At the same time, the Fatty was also extremely depressed. She was only at the Great Perfection realm, and he was only a little bit away from her. How could there be such a big gap between their combat strength? Chun Hao felt like he was a clown. Although he wasn't as miserable as an ant, the other party had indeed made him, who had used all his strength, look battered and exhausted. At this point, even if Chun Hao did not want to admit it, he had to admit that the body of a Sword Emperor was powerful. Moreover, he faintly felt that even if he had reached the Great Perfection realm, he would still not be this woman's match. This was because the realm of the Sword Dao and the ultimate Sword Dao skills that she had mastered were beyond his understanding. This was a comprehension that had completely surpassed the realm, and Chun Hao's comprehension that had already surpassed the realm. If you have any other skills, feel free to use them. If I'm satisfied, I'll spare your life. If your mouth is not clean, I'll kill her first. Buzz. Chi. Miao Xian's voice was still indifferent, and calm. Not a single fluctuation of emotions could be detected from her voice. However, as she spoke, she pointed her slender finger at Wan Yishui in the distance. A sword light that contained a terrifying pressure actually appeared above Wan Yishui's head out of thin air. There was no sign, nor was there any fluctuation of energy emitted from her body. However, it just appeared out of thin air. The Sword of Heaven and Earth. The Sword of Heaven and Earth was directly formed by borrowing the power of heaven and earth. Old God, what kind of monster is this? Is the body of a Sword Emperor so terrifying? Chun Hao looked at the flashing sword above Wan Yishui's head, as if it could chop down at any time. Wan Yishui seemed to have been suppressed by the pressure and was unable to move. He could not help but ask in his mind. In Chun Hao's mind, Old God was also shocked and terrified. He was well aware of how powerful the body of Sword Emperor was, but he had never imagined that this woman's comprehension of the heavenly Dao laws, Sword Dao, Heart Realm, and would have reached a level that transcended all realms. This was not something that could be described as perfection in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland. Master, you don't have to be discouraged. This girl isn't just at the great circle of the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland. In my opinion, she must have been at the great circle of the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland for many years before she stepped into the Emperor Star Secret Realm. She has already surpassed her realm in every aspect. Once she steps into the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, she only needs to refine her energy to directly reach the great circle of the Hongmeng Supremacy Realm. Once she reaches the Dao Severing Stage, she won't just be at the first heaven of the Dao Severing Stage. How is this possible? Chun Hao said in surprise. Then, without waiting for Old God to explain, Chun Hao continued. Could it be related to the body of a Sword Emperor? That's right. The body of a Sword Emperor is based on the Sword Dao. In the process of cultivation, it can be said that there are no restrictions at all. Of course, I'm talking about the comprehension of the heavenly Dao laws and Sword Dao absolute arts. In other words, in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, she doesn't need to break through the barrier to reach a higher realm to comprehend the heavenly Dao laws and absolute arts of a higher realm. In other words, the one fighting with you now is a Daoyuo Jinxian at the great circle of the Daoyuo Jinxian realm. In fact, other than her absolute strength, she is definitely at the first heaven of the Dao Severing true immortal realm. So that's how it is. Chun Hao was enlightened. Master, take it easy. Due to the restrictions of the immortal Emperor Tomb's laws, I can't go out with my current realm. And fighting with you, as one, is only using your strength. My realm is still inferior to hers. In other words, I can't help you now. Old God continued. The Emperor Star Secret Realm's laws were set against the Daoyuo Jinxian. After the Old God awakened, although his realm was one level higher than Chun Hao, he could only hide in Chun Hao's mind. Moreover, he had to use the profound mysteries in the deepest part of Chun Hao's mind that only the Old God could control to conceal his aura. Otherwise, even if he was in the mind, he, who had surpassed the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, would be destroyed by the laws left behind by the immortal emperor. It was impossible for him to come out and help Chun Hao fight. Chun Hao was afraid of breaking the vases. He had the undying bloodline and had absolute confidence in his survival, so he had no problem. However, his opponent could actually move heaven and earth without any warning, condensing a terrifying sword light and directly controlling Wan Yishui. This was beyond his control. Therefore, Chun Hao had no choice but to obediently keep his mouth shut. What do you want? Chun Hao asked. Very simple. Attack me. If you can injure me even a little, you won't die. Or take my attacks. If you don't die within 3 moves, I will spare your lives. Don't even think about escaping. Otherwise, she will be the first to die. Miao Xian said with a faint smile. However, Chun Hao believed that this woman would do as she said. Although he didn't dare to say anything, he was cursing in his heart. How could this woman be so perverted at such a young age? Torturing others and seeking to be tormented? Damn it. It was probably because high and lonely, great voice Ruashi and expert had been lonely for so many years that they had become perverted. Otherwise, why would they have such thoughts? If this wasn't despicable, then what was? That's what you said. Boom. Crack. 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 Chun Hao gnashed his teeth as he spoke. At the same time, the vital energy and blood in his body suddenly surged out, causing his bones, tendons, and blood to emit waves of crackling sounds at this moment, and his fat body directly shrunk to 1/3 of its original size. Come, I will take your 3 moves. Chun Hao decisively made his choice. Although Chun Hao didn't use his strongest attack in the previous 2 attacks, the difference wasn't big. Miao Xian's relaxed appearance made Chun Hao not have the slightest confidence that he could injure her. He could only choose to take her 3 attacks. This was the second time in his life that Chun Hao had been forced to this extent by a woman. The first time was Mei Yang with the innate Taoist embryo. However, after enduring some years of depression, he counterattacked and intimidated her. Now, she was his woman. It was just that she hadn't stepped over the last line of defense. And Miao Xian, with the Sword Emperor body, was the second. The advantage of the innate physique was obvious. What a strong blood and chi. And it's an extremely pure, immortal bloodline. You have also condensed the undying sword will? Miao Xian revealed a real look of surprise this time. She stared at the fat man and said, Fatty, your concealment technique is really powerful. In the same realm, there are very few people who can hide from my perception. However, you have made me wrong again and again. In this world, except for the Great Change Movement technique, I really can't think of any other concealment technique that can do this. If I'm not wrong, you must have cultivated the Great Change Movement technique to the ultimate level, right? F*CK. Chun Hao cursed secretly. He didn't expect that when he released his strongest physical aura, this woman could see so many problems. She even directly guessed that it was the Great Change Movement technique. Chapter 1333. Since you're not speaking, it means that I'm right, right? The Great 5 Elements art and the Great Change art have both reached the ultimate level. This should be your limit. Miao Xian suddenly looked up at the sky and frowned slightly. Senior brother, are you still following me? Chi. A sword light suddenly flashed past, and a figure that stood upright like a sword floated down from the void. Chun Hao gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked. The powerful perception that he was so confident and had completely lost its effectiveness when he was in the state of, I am heaven and earth are me. Therefore, he had not sensed the arrival of this youth at all. Even more so, he did not expect that this youth was also a powerful existence that he had met once before but had not clashed with. They were both at the perfection stage. He also did not expect that he was this woman's senior brother. Junior sister, it's just a coincidence. As far as I know, this brother is the chief disciple of the Dahua Academy, Li Yuan. He's proficient in the great teleportation art. I happened to see the conflict with Xiao Mantian and his wife 10,000 years ago. What did you say? Miao Xian frowned and looked at senior brother Qing Yang. She seemed to doubt the authenticity of Qing Yang's words. That's the truth. The Great 5 Elements art, the Great Change art, the Great Teleportation art. 3 of the 3,000 great Daos have all reached the ultimate level. I think Brotherly Yuan should be one of the spirits of all things that have awakened. Right? When the Emperor star appears, the celestial emperor comes out. I knew that I would meet you, but I didn't expect to meet you so soon. Junior sister, is there a misunderstanding between you two? His aura was extraordinary as he spoke with a faint smile. Chenhao's face was conflicted and gloomy. Deny it? Someone had to believe it. For this girl who was obviously confident to the point of conceit, even if she was just speculating, it would not be easy to change her mind. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Since he had used 3 great Tao techniques, he had to be prepared for the possibility of being exposed. Now, the arrival of this young man had exposed Chenhao. However, Chenhao did not say anything at this moment. From Qin Yang's attitude and words, Chenhao did not feel any hostility. On the contrary, it seemed that he had deliberately revealed that he had mastered 3 great Tao techniques to attract his junior sister's attention and resolve the conflict between them. Are you done? Miao Xian fixed her eyes on Qin Yang, gradually revealing a trace of coldness. Junior sister, you may leave now. Senior brother, junior sister, Master said, if you say one more word, don't blame me for disregarding our relationship as fellow disciples. Also, senior brother, I'm warning you, don't follow me anymore. No matter what happens, this is my fate, and it has nothing to do with anyone else. My life is mine. You go. Qi. At this moment, Miao Xian's body emitted a terrifying and vast sword qi. It was as if she had turned into a sharp sword. Oh, all right then. At this moment, Qin Yang said with a slightly embarrassed expression. To him, Miao Xian's aura was even more terrifying than Chenhao's, because he was born with the Sword Emperor physique. In front of his junior sister Miao Xian's Sword Emperor aura, an invisible thought of surrendering was born. Shaking his head, Qin Yang turned around and left. He knew that he couldn't interfere in junior sister's matters anymore. Whether it was a calamity or fate, she could only resign herself to fate and make her own choice. Perhaps it's not him. After all, he already has a Tao companion. When Qin Yang left, he glanced at Chenhao and thought to himself, according to their master's divination, Miao Xian would face the greatest calamity in her life in the Emperor's Star secret realm. At the same time, she would also meet the person she was destined to meet. That was a man who could suppress her. According to their master, perhaps there was only one man in the world who could suppress her, who had the Sword Emperor physique. However, as for who it was, they couldn't deduce it clearly. Although this Li Yuan might be the reincarnation of an immortal emperor, his potential in the Daluo Golden Wonderland is still too weak. In front of junior sister, there's no need to talk about suppression. Young Master Saber and Sword Ding Hao and Young Master Xinxing Feng Wuxing might be able to reach the Absolute Circle realm, but only a little. Xiao Mantian isn't worthy. The biggest possibility is that he's the spirit of all things born in the immortal emperor space. Will he be in the coffin of the immortal emperor tomb, or at the top of the Azure Cloud stairs? Qin Yang, who was thinking about the problem in his mind, gradually went further and further away, as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard. Soon he disappeared. The reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Why, said still counts. Are you ready? After confirming that senior brother Qin Yang had really left, Miao Xian regained her calm appearance and stared at Chenhao. This made Chenhao a little puzzled. However, now was obviously not the time to think about these problems. The first thing he had to do was to withstand the attack of this abnormal woman. The identity of the spirit of all things was not enough to deter this strong and confident woman. Come, I hope you'll keep your word. His skills were not as good as his opponents, so he could only follow the rhythm and method arranged by the other party. When he was alone, he could fight with his life on the line, he could escape at all costs, and he could even blend into the world. However, Wan Yishui had become the other party's weakness. He had no choice but to swallow his anger. I've always kept my word. First move. Hiss. Miao Xian still casually formed a sword finger and lightly pointed at Chenhao. There was not much fluctuation, nor was there a vast and terrifying sword light. There was only a slight sound of breaking through the air from that slender and sparkling finger, shooting towards Chun Hao. However, at this moment, the world seemed to have stopped because of her casual finger. All sound disappeared, and all light dimmed. In the eyes of Chun Hao, in the eyes of the imprisoned one, Yishui, and even in the eyes of the old god who was secretly watching in Chun Hao's mind, there was only that sparkling and translucent jade-like sword light left in the world. Chi! It was as if the laws of time and space had slowed down. The jade-like sword light slowly grew larger in Chun Hao's eyes. However, at the same time, Chun Hao's thoughts also slowed down. He could not react in time. In other words, his mind was captured by this sword light and became sluggish. Chi! Chi, chi, chi. In the process of the sword light growing larger, the light became more and more resplendent. At this time, there was also an astonishing surge of heaven and earth spirit chi, which gathered in the sword finger. Chun Hao's pupils shrank smaller and smaller. The pulsing between his eyebrows became stronger and stronger, and the pressure he felt became stronger and stronger. However, he just watched, as if his mind had really fallen into an illusion and did not have any reaction. Fatty, fatty, fatty. Master, master, wake up. At this time, one Yishui, who was only watching from afar, although his body had been imprisoned by the sword light, still forcefully took a breath and shouted at Chun Hao in horror. At the same time, the old god, who was also in a daze, also roared in Chun Hao's mind. However, Chun Hao did not seem to hear. Chapter 1334. Strange, his state of mind is obviously very strong. How could his mind be affected so easily? Miao Xian had only used 80% of her strength in the first attack. In her opinion, although the fatty would be injured, he should be able to block this attack. However, what she didn't expect was that the fatty would be affected by her sword intent, which contained the aura of a sword emperor, and fall into a daze. According to her judgment of the fatty's overall strength, this shouldn't be the case. I've already slowed down a lot. Since you're going to die under my sword, you can't blame me. It's fate. It seems like I've thought too much. This fatty isn't even qualified. Seeing that the sword light was about to reach the center of Chun Hao's eyebrows, and that the fatty still hadn't woken up, Miao Xian muttered to herself. However, before she could finish her sentence, her eyes suddenly trembled and her pupils instantly shrank. The fatty suddenly let out a thunderous roar. Chi! Between Chun Hao's violently pulsating eyebrows, an incomparably sharp golden light blossomed. A black eye shining with golden light actually appeared between Chun Hao's eyebrows. It was not an illusion, but a real eye. Demonic, cold, emotionless, disdainful, a cold, disdainful aura swept out from the demonic black eye. Chi! As the golden black eye appeared, Chun Hao didn't stop at all. At the critical moment, when Miao Xian's sword finger was about to reach him, he stabbed out with his sword. The extremely bright and condensed golden light seemed to cut through the void. Wherever it passed, the space was distorted. At this moment, the expression in Miao Xian's eyes changed drastically. An indescribable feeling spread out from the depths of her heart. Boom! Rumble, when the sword light and the sword finger met. A terrifying explosion and bright light swept out in all directions. The mountains collapsed, and the earth cracked, and dust flew everywhere. Chi! Although Chun Hao had unleashed an ability that shocked Miao Xian, under the divine abilities law, which was completely beyond his realm, he was still sent flying by the terrifying recoil. However, unlike before, when he was sent flying, his eyes were terrifyingly calm. His body didn't suffer any injuries, and the demonic black eye between his eyebrows was still shining with golden light. Supernatural ability? Miao Xian stared at Chun Hao's bewitching eyes from afar and asked in surprise. The opening of the spiritual altar, I was a legend, but it was only a legend. At least, Miao Xian had never seen or heard of it. In the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors, there was someone who had opened this special ability. At most, it was just a shadow. However, A vertical eye had really appeared between Chun Hao's eyebrows. Most importantly, the golden glow emitted by the demonic eyes was able to nullify Sword Monarch Miao Xuan's aura. At the same time, when the golden light landed on her body, Miao Xian had a feeling that she had been seen through, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Not bad. One move, Chun Hao said in a low voice with a deadly earnest expression. There was nothing he could do about it. With Wan Yishui around, he didn't dare to act recklessly against such a powerful and domineering woman. If he said something wrong, Wan Yishui might be killed. That wasn't what Chun Hao wanted. However, at this moment, Chun Hao's heart was extremely agitated under his calm appearance. Under the double pressure of Miao Xian's invincible aura and Sword Monarch aura, his fiery golden eyes finally had a new upgrade. Break illusion. Break the illusory but real aura. As everyone knew, aura only affected the living and conscious people. It had no effect on a dead person who had lost consciousness. It was like playing the lute to a cow, because aura directly affected people's hearts, minds, and states of mind. To be exact, what it really affected was only the soul consciousness. It could be said to be the most mysterious kind of illusion. Whether it was the invincible aura or the Sword Monarch aura, they were all a kind of aura. However, Chun Hao's fiery golden eyes had evolved to the level of break illusion, which made the effect of aura disappear completely. The only thing that could really affect Chun Hao was the substantial pressure brought by the opponent's strong fighting spirit and energy fluctuation. Everything in a mind couldn't cause the slightest fluctuation in Chun Hao's state of mind under the special ability of Break Illusion Eyes. Before his fiery golden eyes had broken through to the Pang realm, Chun Hao felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing down on his chest under Miao Xian's power. No matter what he did, his reaction was slow and sluggish. It was only slightly better than the feeling of being unable to move even if he wanted to. But now, the mountain had disappeared. Although Chun Hao's strength didn't increase, his whole body became more agile. What's the function? Miao Xian asked again with a smile. Even if she was smiling, others couldn't see any fluctuation in her emotions. The only feeling they had was that she was a high and mighty empress who made people worship her. And her question seemed to be a matter of course for everyone to answer. Unfortunately, this so-called aura of a king completely disappeared in Chun Hao's eyes, but Chun Hao had to answer. Break illusion, Chun Hao said directly. Break illusion? Illusion. All illusions and all illusions, including aura? Yes. Your aura no longer has any influence on me, Chun Hao said calmly, his eyes moving around Miao Xian's body. There's another function, right? No. What? Huh? Chun Hao was slightly surprised. His eyes were fixed on Miao Xian's graceful and exquisite body, which was completely naked in his eyes. Because on Miao Xian's slender right leg, there was a treasured sword, which was made up of many mysterious runes. Chun Hao couldn't help but want to take a closer look at it at first glance. But at this time, with Miao Xian's words, it directly collapsed and disappeared. Not good. What a shrewd woman. Chun Hao knew that he had jumped into the hole dug by Miao Xian. The fact was indeed so. When Miao Xian saw that Chun Hao's eye ability had been activated, her sure had no effect at all. When the other party's gaze landed on her, she felt as if she had been seen through. Thus, she buried this trap on her thigh. Sure enough, after Chun Hao's seemingly careless gaze fell on her body, he looked even more at her thigh. What did this mean? That's it? Do you believe it? Haven't you seen enough? What a powerful supernatural ability. Very good. What I said before, I still keep my word. There's still 2 more moves. If you die, I may be able to pass on your special ability. Miao Xian's tone was still calm, but at this moment, her face turned slightly red, and the gaze she looked at Chun Hao with was countless times colder, as if she was looking at a dead person. She was arrogant, destined to step onto the peak of martial arts and become the sword emperor of a generation. How could she allow anyone to see her jade body? Even if the other party was only using his special ability, and didn't have the slightest lust to stay on the key parts of her body. She would never allow the person who saw her to live. Chapter 1335. Miao Xian was also unhappy in her heart. Her perfect figure, her proud breasts. This fatty clearly saw them, but he didn't stop at all. Wasn't this ignoring her attractiveness? Of course, this was only a subconscious feeling in the depths of her heart. She didn't show it. As Miao Xian spoke, a strong and ice-cold, murderous aura swept out from her graceful and delicate body. Bang! A clear and melodious sword sound suddenly burst out. A silver sword with a cold aura appeared in her hand. It looked ordinary, without any spell symbols engraved on it. However, in Miao Xian's hand, it automatically vibrated excitedly and made a sound that sounded like a baby's cry. What a powerful sword spirit! F***CK. At this time, Chen Hao could clearly feel that Miao Xian's aura was completely different from before. Before, even when she was bullying Chen Hao and Wan Yishui, she didn't have the kind of killing intent that came from her bones. But now, Chen Hao could be sure that she really had the intention to kill because of his special ability. It could only be said that this woman was too shrewd. Of course, her intuition was also very strong. That was why she dug this hole and made Chen Hao reveal that his special ability didn't have the ability to see through things. Now, Chen Hao couldn't deny it even if he wanted to. What if I don't die after 2 moves? Chen Hao asked. Impossible, Miao Xian said with certainty. With me, anything is possible. Facing a person with a murderous aura, Chen Hao was very clear that he had no way out. There was no meaning in enduring. He stood proudly, and his eyes were like swords. He didn't give in at all. I'll keep my word. If you can hold on, I'll spare your life. Unfortunately, it's impossible in front of me. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Following Miao Xian's voice, her body began to bloom with a bright light. Her whole person slowly turned into a sword. Endless pressure and terrifying sword intent gushed out, causing the heaven and earth to shake. Die! Boom! Miao Xian, who had become one with heaven, earth, man, and sword, tore through the void and rushed out. What made Chen Hao's pupils shrink was that Miao Xian had actually unleashed 3 types of sword Daos that were way beyond his level of comprehension. The Slaughter Sword Dao, the Destruction Sword Dao, and the Undying Sword Dao, with destruction as the foundation, slaughter as the edge, and indestructibility as the tail seal. Destruction, slaughter, and seal, they were perfectly fused together. Roar! Chen Hao let out a furious roar as he crazily gathered all of his cultivation. His body, bloodline, true essence, soul, state of mind, willpower, and the runes that Chen Hao had never used before, but had successfully condensed in his body, were all madly activated. Could they withstand it? Even Chen Hao himself wasn't sure. He only knew that Miao Xian's strike was way beyond his level. Except for the absolute strength, the terrifying fluctuations made Wan Yishui, who was far away, sweat for Chen Hao. Even though she didn't know what was going on, she could sense that Fatty was facing a life and death situation. She knew very well that the main reason why Fatty was facing it head-on was because of her, but she couldn't do anything to help him. But now, she was no longer nervous. If they were going to die, then they would die together. Unlike Wan Yishui, who was nervous, she didn't have any intention of giving up. Her mind was operating at high speed. Once there was a problem, it would be the time for her to desperately help. Boom! Rumble. The moment the two met, a terrifying explosion raged. The void collapsed, the Tao was annihilated, and even the supreme laws in the immortal Emperor tomb showed terrifying fluctuations. The raging energy seemed to have detonated the entire sky. Mountains were directly annihilated, the earth was lifted, dust billowed, and stone fragments swirled in the air. This was the immortal Emperor tomb. Every grain of sand, stone, grass, and tree had been condensed by endless pressure. If such a terrifying fluctuation appeared, what would it be like in the outside world? You didn't die. In the billowing dust, Miao Xian's cold voice came out. Wan Yixue, who was prepared to die for love, was stunned for a moment, and then she became excited. Ha ha! I thought you were strong, but I didn't expect you to be so weak. No matter how high your realm of comprehension is, it is still a realm of comprehension, not your own realm. You're limited by absolute power and absolute realm. Can you fight me? When the dust settled, a fat body crawled out from the dust. Although his body was covered in blood, and the corners of his mouth were still uncontrollably bleeding, he stood up proudly and firmly, and slowly rose into the air. His pitch-black eyes were still deep and clear, and the demonic vertical eye between his eyebrows was even more dazzling. Is that so? Buzz. Miao Xian's body was still spotless and unharmed. After a short moment of shock, her aura suddenly soared again. Her long hair fluttered without wind, and the corners of her dress fluttered. Her crystal-clear, spiritual altar bloomed with a bright light at this moment. You are the first one who can force me to use my strongest power. Even if you die, you can be proud. Chi. It was still the combination of heaven, earth, man, and sword, and it was still rushing towards Chen Hao, but this time the speed of flying was much slower, and there was no terrifying fluctuation caused by the previous sword. Gently, simply, and seemingly without any power, it flew towards Chen Hao, who had just crawled up. Her graceful and exquisite body, her long hair fluttering in the wind, her beautiful and otherworldly face, and her emotionless eyes. At this slow speed, they were clearly magnified in Chen Hao's pupils. Even though the demonic vertical eye could see more and was more erotic at this moment, Chen Hao's hair stood on end. There was no trace of lust in his heart. There was only a kind of threat that came from the depths of his soul. In spirit attack. Master, be careful. Old God said in shock in Chen Hao's mind. In spirit? Isn't it just a soul attack? No, the soul is divided into the soul, and the soul is divided into yin and yang. Master, you can only use the yang spirit now. In the immortal emperor's space, you cultivated the yin spirit. When you step on the path of the immortal emperor, your yin spirit and yang spirit will become one. Master, let me do it. This is not something you can resist. You don't even know the most basic mystery of the yin and yang spirit. Buzz. Old God's spirit moved, and he seemed to be extremely nervous. The yin and yang spirit theory. Old God's words reminded Chen Hao of what Yang Luyan in the immortal world had said to him. That is to say, a cultivator has two sides, one yin and one yang. I am now cultivating the yang spirit, and in the immortal world, I am cultivating the yin spirit. When the two sides become one, I will step on the path of the immortal emperor. Yin spirit and yang spirit are like the left hand and the right hand, right? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.